The story of Kil'jaeden does not begin with Kil'jaeden himself, it begins with the Titans and Sargeras. The Titans had a mission to bring order to the universe. They shaped the worlds, they created life, and took out those who were against their vision. The Titans were led by the Pantheon, and their champion was called Sargeras, and his task was defending their mission against the darkness of the universe. He imprisoned countless of demons, dreadlords, and all kinds of evil creations. He performed this duty for thousands of years, but over time he began to doubt. If the universe was supposed to be all about order, then why was it fighting the Titans so much? Why was there so much evil and chaos in the world? Was that perhaps the way it's supposed to be? He talked with the other members of the Pantheon about this, but they couldn't help him. They weren't able to convince him of the truth of their mission, and Sargeras left the Pantheon. The corruption within himself, the doubt and despair, they started to manifest on the outside. Great flames burst forth out of his body, and Sargeras decided that the Titans' their mission was folly. That order was not the way to go, and that chaos was the only truth of the universe. His mission was no longer to protect the work of the Titans, quite the opposite. His mission became to destroy their work. In order to do that, he would need an army, so he made his way to the demons that he had imprisoned and he set them free. The demons in return were more than willing to join his army, and the Burning Legion was created. Sometime after this, Sargeras found a planet called Argus, and on this planet were very powerful beings, namely the Eredar. The Eredar were ruled by 3 leaders, namely Velen, Archimond, and Kil'jaeden. Sargeras wanted them into his army, so he made contact with the leaders and he showed them a future in which they would receive incredible power, knowledge beyond their imagination, and planets full of loving subjects who would worship and honor them. Archimond and Kil'jaeden were directly on board with this plan. They were taken away by Sargeras and his powers. But the prophet Velen felt like something wasn't quite right. He meditated on this problem, and the Naaru showed him the truth of the vision. The loving subjects were actually demons. The powers given would transform them into unnatural beings, and the planets they would come across would be destroyed. Velen saw that if they joined Sargeras, that the universe would be doomed, so he talked to his fellow leaders and showed them the truth. To his surprise, they didn't care about the truth. He had perhaps expected this from Archimond, since he could sometimes easily be swayed if people played on his vanity. But Kil'jaeden, he had expected more of him. Kil'jaeden was the stronger one, he was decisive and he was wise, which is why Velen felt closer to Kil'jaeden, but even he was not convinced. They told Velen that this was just a vision in his mind, not a certain truth, and Velen realized that they now belonged to Sargeras. With the help of the Naaru, Velen managed to gather as many of his people as he could, and he was ready to escape the planet. Unknown to him was that Sargeras had already started to turn some of his people, and they nearly killed Velen and his followers. Only because of the Naaru was Velen able to escape the planet with his people, and Kil'jaeden was not happy about this. He took Velen's betrayal very personal, especially since they were so close, and he promised that he would find them and destroy them, even if it took 1,000 years. Those that had followed Velen would now start to call themselves Draenei, and Kil'jaeden was true to his word. The Draenei would find a planet to hide on, Kil'jaeden would find them, Velen would be warned in time, and they would evacuate the planet before the Burning Legion arrived. This went on for many years until the Draenei had to crash land on the planet they would call Draenor. The Naaru, who had helped them escape time and time again, had fallen ill, so there was no way of leaving the planet anymore. Kil'jaeden didn't know about this, of course, and when his scouts found the Draenei again, he decided to change his plans. Instead of sending the might of the Burning Legion, he decided to use the Orcs who were already on the planet. Corrupt them, turn them against the Draenei, and let them do his dirty work. The Orcs at the time were not allies with the Draenei, but they also weren't enemies. Occasionally they would trade with each other, and the Draenei had even saved 2 young Orcs from an ogre. That means that Kil'jaeden couldn't just show up and tell them to murder them. He had to manipulate them, and his first target was the shaman Ner'zhul. The shamans of the Orcs sometimes received a visit from their ancestors or Orcs who had passed away, and Ner'zhul was no different. In fact, he was one of the most revered and powerful shamans amongst the Orcs. One night, his beloved dead wife Rokan paid him a visit in a vision, and this had never happened before, even though Ner'zhul had many times wished for it. She told him that the Orcish clans could no longer live as individual clans, that they had to be united because there was a threat for the Orcs on the planet. She told him that the Draenei had to be exterminated in order for the Orcs to stand tall and proud to claim the planet for their own. Ner'zhul swore that he would follow the advice of the ancestors, so he gathered the clans and he shared his vision with the other shamans. But what they didn't know was that this was a false vision orchestrated by Kil'jaeden. Even so, it convinced the Orcs the word of the ancestors was holy to them, so they started to work together and they trained for war. After their first attacks on the Draenei, Ner'zhul received a new vision, only this time it wasn't his beloved wife. This time it was Kil'jaeden himself. The fake Rulkan had told Ner'zhul about Kil'jaeden, and she had told him that he was even above the ancestors and that Kil'jaeden was very concerned about the future of the Orcs. Ner'zhul believed it all at first without question, and not just because it was his wife that told him this. He had started to enjoy being the center of attention of all the Orcs, and he started to dream about the future promised by Rulkan. Kil'jaeden is also very persuasive when he wants to be. They don't call him the Deceiver for nothing, but eventually Ner'zhul started to doubt. His wife no longer came to him, now it was only Kil'jaeden. And his mission was no longer in the name of the ancestors, now it was in the name of Kil'jaeden. One night, Ner'zhul dared to leave his hut and travel to Oshu'gan, and Oshu'gan is the spaceship that the Draenei crashed on Draenor with, but it also became a very holy and spiritual place for the Orcs. Inside, Ner'zhul tried to communicate with the ancestors, and they actually showed themselves, but to his horror, their faces showed nothing but hatred. Hatred for the fool that he had been, for leading his people down this dark path, and the ancestors turned their back on Ner'zhul. You have to understand that the ancestors meant everything, especially to the shamans of the Orcs, so on his way home, Ner'zhul tried to come up with some plan of trying to save the situation. Unfortunately for him, his apprentice Gul'dan had seen everything what happened, and he had informed Kil'jaeden. From that point on, Ner'zhul was out of the picture. Kil'jaeden knew that he wanted to betray him, so he decided to use Gul'dan instead. With Gul'dan, he didn't have to play games, since Gul'dan was more than willing to sell out his own people in exchange for more power. By order of Kil'jaeden, Gul'dan transformed the Orcs into the Horde. He appointed Blackhand as the first war chief to rule the Horde, but in reality, it was Gul'dan who ruled from behind the curtains. The elements would no longer come to the shamans, because even the elements condemned their actions, so the Orcs embraced a new power given to them by Kil'jaeden. The first warlocks of the Horde were born, dealing terrible damage to the Draenei, while also magically aging the Orcish children to bolster their forces. Near the end of the war against the Draenei, there was only one city left to conquer, Shafra, but before they marched, they received a final gift. Kil'jaeden had sent his lieutenant Mannoroth to Gul'dan, and Mannoroth had spilled his own demonic blood for the Orcs to drink. Ner'zhul witnessed these events, and he realized that if the Orcs would drink this blood, they would become slaves forever. In a great act of defiance, he wrote a cryptic note to Durotan, warning him not to accept Gul'dan's offer. Durotan is Thrall's father, and one of the few Orcs who constantly spoke out against Gul'dan's plans. He was the one who was rescued by the Draenei when he was a child, and he didn't believe that exterminating them was the best course of action. This warning saved Durotan and his clan from a fate worse than death. The gift offered to the Orcs gave them incredible powers and the means to destroy the Draenei once and for all, but it also made them slaves to the Burning Legion. The Orcs charged the city of Shafra with an incredible bloodlust, and they killed every man, woman and child that they could find. Kil'jaeden watched this slaughter together with his lieutenant Mannoroth, and he believed that his quest was finally over. There was no way that Velen could escape this onslaught, and his brother Archimonde was whispering that he was wasting his time, so he and Mannoroth left the planet behind and the Orcs to their fate. What he didn't know was that Velen was not killed that day. The Draenei had left enough of their people behind to make it look like they were all dead, but in truth Velen and the rest of his people were hiding in Zangarmarsh. Velen was told by the Naru that he needed to stay alive to fight another day, and that his destiny would lead his people to a better place. Velen accepted his wisdom, and he tried to survive for his people, but the loss of so many of his kind did hurt him in his very soul. In the meantime, the Orcs, they were not doing any better. After the final attack on Shafra, They had no target left to use their bloodlust on, so they turned on each other. The corruption of their race had spread into the planet itself. The water had dried up and food was limited, so something had to be done. Kil'jaeden had left them to their fate after promising Gul'dan the world, but his master Sargeras had further use of the Orcs. He made contact with Gul'dan, told him about Azeroth, and the first Orcish invasion would follow. The Orcs would do terrible damage to Azeroth, but eventually the invasion would fail and Gul'dan lost his life. After they lost this war, it was Terran Gornfiend who came up with the plan of invading other planets besides Azeroth. They might have lost this war, but at least now they knew that there were more planets out there, planets that might not put up so much resistance. Ner'zhul was on board with this plan, so they collected the artifacts required and they made their way to the Black Temple to create these new portals. By the time that they made their way to the Black Temple, the Alliance was hot on their tail. To collect these artifacts, the Horde had to invade Azeroth for a second time, and the Alliance, they figured that they wanted to prevent the Orcs from causing the same damage to other planets as they did to Azeroth. In the final moments of the story, Ner'zhul made his portals and he told the Orcs who were with him to follow him to the Promised Land. They refused Ner'zhul at first, since they didn't want to leave their brothers behind, so Ner'zhul killed one of them, which motivated the rest to follow. Instead of reaching this so-called Promised Land, Ner'zhul ended in front of Kil'jaeden himself. Kil'jaeden was still pissed with him for betraying him, so he slowly ripped Ner'zhul's soul piece by piece. This caused Ner'zhul agonizing pain, and when his soul was no more, when it was all torn apart, Kil'jaeden reformed it and did it all over again. This torment went on for several years, but Kil'jaeden's master Sargeras still wanted to conquer Azeroth. In order to weaken the world and get it ready for a new invasion, Kil'jaeden decided to give Ner'zhul one more chance. He bound his soul to the Helm of Domination and he placed him on top of Icecrown, turning him into the Lich King. He also gave Ner'zhul additional powers he could use to manipulate, to control, to create the Scourge that would deal massive damage to the world. At first, Ner'zhul did exactly as he was told. With his new powers, he summoned powerful individuals who could aid him with his quest, and amongst them was Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad heard the summons of the Lich King, and he made his way to Northrend. There at Icecrown, he offered his services in exchange for immortality and incredible power.
I was cast out by my comrades, exiled, forced to wander the frozen wastes. But I was not alone. Not entirely. The voice, now my only companion, guided me to my destination. Strange, nightmarish creatures awaited me at the entrance. I felt my blood run cold as Icecrown itself. Inside, I bore witness to horrific acts, demonstrations of power that could be mine for the asking. Terrified, I ran, but did not get far. All too soon, my choice was made. Too late did I realize that such power does not come without a price.
Ner'zhul was very pleased with this, and he sent Kel'Thuzad back home. Back in Lordaeron, Kel'Thuzad worked and he formed the Cult of the Damned. This cult worshipped the Lich King, worshipped Ner'zhul, and they worked on spreading the plague.
My life for Ner'zhul.
This plague would not only kill the citizens of Lordaeron, it would also turn them into the undead, into the Scourge that would turn on their own people. Everything went exactly as planned. Arthas found out about the plague, he killed Kel'Thuzad, he purged Trefhome, followed Mal'Ganis back to Northrend, and he picked up the blade Frostmourne. Frostmourne was cast out of the block of ice that imprisoned Ner'zhul, and Ner'zhul was able to communicate with Arthas through the blade. The blade also took a piece of his soul with him and turned Arthas into an agent of the Lich King, into one of the first new Death Knights. For months, Arthas roamed the land of Northrend, listening to the whispers of Ner'zhul until he returned home. Once home, he murdered his own father, destroyed his own kingdom, and weakened the defenses of Azeroth for the invasion of the Legion. By a cruel twist of fate, he was then told to resurrect Kel'Thuzad, since Kel'Thuzad had the power to open the way for the Burning Legion. Once that was done, once the Sunwell was destroyed and Kel'Thuzad was a Lich, they moved to Dalaran, stole the Book of Medivh, and they used this to summon Archimonde into our world.
Come forth, Lord Archimonde. Enter this world, and let us bask in your power. has come to this world. You have done well, little Lich. My plan worked perfectly.
Lord Archimond, all the preparations have been made.
Very well, Tichondrius. Since the Lich King is of no further use to me, you Dreadlords will now command the Scourge.
As you wish, Lord Archimond.
Soon, I will order the invasion to begin. But first, I will make an example of these paltry wizards by crushing their city into the ashes of history.
This has got to be a joke. What happens to us now?
Be patient, young Death Knight. The Lich King foresaw this as well. You may yet have a part to play in his grand design.
This was all part of Kil'jaeden's plan, and it seemed like Ner'zhul's part was played. But Ner'zhul was smart and he was powerful. He had bigger plans than this, and he wasn't about to spend the rest of his life trapped in a block of ice. He imagined that he could outsmart Kil'jaeden and use Arthas to set himself free. He told Arthas to find Illidan and point him towards the skull of his old apprentice, towards the skull of Gul'dan.
I am free after 10,000 years. Yet still my own brother thinks I am a villain. I'll show him my true power. I'll show him that the demons have no hold over me.
Are you certain of that, Demon Hunter? Are you certain your will is your own?
You reek of death, human. You'll regret approaching me.
Come then. You'll find that we're evenly matched.
Forever. What is it you truly want?
The Dreadlord who commands this undead army is called Tichondrius. He controls a powerful warlock artifact called the Skull of Gul'dan. It is responsible for corrupting these forests.
And you wish for me to steal it? Why?
Let's just say that I have no love for Tichondrius, and the Lord I serve would benefit from the Legion's downfall.
Why should I believe anything you say, little human?
My master sees all, Demon Hunter. He knows that you've sought power your whole life. Now it lies within your grasp. Seize it, and your enemies will be undone.
What? Who are you? Let's see how confident you are against one of your own kind, Dreadlord.
Kil'jaeden found out about this. He found out that Ner'zhul had sent Arthas to Illidan, and that Ner'zhul was planning to set himself free. As part of his own plans, Kil'jaeden talked with Illidan, and he told him to take out the Lich King.
Many months after the Legion's defeat at the Battle of Mount Hyjal, I was visited by one of the last great demon lords, Kil'jaeden.
Illidan, in the past you have been both friend and foe to the Burning Legion. But by consuming the Skull of Gul'dan, you sealed our defeat in this world. I come to offer you a second chance to serve us.
What would you have me do, Great One?
My creation, the Lich King, has betrayed me. He dared to break the pact that binds him to my will. But his spirit still lies trapped inside the frozen throne of Icecrown. Destroy it for me, and I will grant you your heart's desire.
It shall be done, Great One. It shall be done.
Illidan did his very best to destroy the Lich King, but his brother Malfurion stopped him, since his spell didn't just destroy Ner'zhul, it was about to destroy Northrend as well. At that point in the story, Tyrande Whisperwind was missing, and since Illidan still loved her, he decided to help his brother with finding her. This means that he betrayed Kil'jaeden, that he didn't fulfill his mission, so once they found Tyrande, he fled the planet. He feared the wrath of Kil'jaeden, so Illidan decided it was a good idea to hide on Outland. Outland, formerly known as Draenor.
Given my failure, I fled to this desolate place to evade Kil'jaeden's wrath. Now, if I am to remain here in exile, we will need to ensure that Kil'jaeden's agents have been cleansed from the land.
Naturally, Kil'jaeden found him and he offered him one more chance.
Foolish little mongrel. You failed to destroy the frozen throne as I commanded. And still you thought to hide from me in this forsaken backwater. I thought you to be more cunning, Illidan.
Kil'jaeden, I was merely set back. I was attempting to bolster my forces. The Lich King will be destroyed. I promise you.
Indeed. Still, these servitors you've gathered show some promise. I will give you one last chance, Illidan. Destroy the frozen throne, or face my eternal wrath.
Perhaps hiding here was not the most prudent decision.
With his final chance, the race to Icecrown was on. Both Arthas and Illidan tried to reach the top of Icecrown, but in the end it was Arthas who defeated Illidan in combat and merged with Ner'zhul. Arthas was in such a hurry that he just left Illidan in the snow to die, but Illidan didn't die. Kil'jaeden's Sunstrider and Lady Vashj took Illidan back to Outland, and there they prepared their forces in the hope of standing against Kil'jaeden. They knew that one day Kil'jaeden would come to punish them for their failure, so they wanted to be ready and they spent their time preparing. In a strange twist of events during the Burning Crusade, the punishment never came. Instead, Kil'jaeden decided to leave Illidan to his fate and he recruited Kil'jaeden's Sunstrider to his cause. According to Magister Felendorn, Kil'jaeden was aware of Illidan's insanity after getting his ass kicked, so he switched paymasters accordingly. Apparently Kil'jaeden had enough of manipulating and letting others do his work. This time he decided to take matters into his own hands. Kil'jaeden's Sunstrider had spent his time in Outland collecting magic in Netherstorm, and they transported that magic to the Sunwell plateau, not to restore the Sunwell, but to create a portal which would allow Kil'jaeden access into our world. They'd also captured Envina, and her story deserves a video on its own. The short version is that when Arthas used the Sunwell to resurrect Kel'Thuzad, he didn't corrupt it entirely. A part of its power was found by the red dragon Coriastras, and he transformed its power into a living being, Envina, and he did this to hide her away from the Scourge. Unfortunately, they found out who she really was, what she really was, and she was captured by Kil'jaeden. They dragged her to the Sunwell Plateau, and they planned to use her power to power the portal and bring Kil'jaeden into our world. Thankfully, we found out about all of this, and we made our way to the Sunwell Plateau to stop Kil'jaeden from ever setting foot on land.
All my plans have led to this. The expendable have perished. So be it. Now I shall succeed where Sargeras could not. I will bleed this wretched world and secure my place as the true master of the Burning Legion. The end has come. Let the unraveling of this world commence. The powers of the Sunwell turn against me. What have you done? What have you done?
This defeat is not the end of Kil'jaeden. We didn't kill him that day, we just pushed him back down his portal to wherever he currently is. It's interesting to note that Kil'jaeden says,
Now I shall succeed where Sargeras could not. I will bleed this wretched world and secure my place as the true master of the Burning Legion.
This implies that there's a bit of a power struggle within the Burning Legion, and perhaps that Kil'jaeden isn't satisfied with just sitting at Sargeras' side. He apparently wants to rule it all. Even Chris Metzen said that this defeat only pissed him off, and now taking Azeroth is no longer just another mission, now it's personal. You can be certain that one day we will have to face off against Kil'jaeden in his full glory. A couple of you already asked me if we will see Kil'jaeden in Warlords of Draenor. At BlizzCon they said that Gul'dan is indeed on the phone with Kil'jaeden and that Garrosh is going to change one of the key moments in the Orcish history. He is going to prevent the Orcs from drinking Mannoroth's blood, preventing them from ever becoming slaves to the Burning Legion. We don't know what other events are changed, we don't know what is going to happen like it happened in our timeline, but it is possible that we might have to fight Kil'jaeden. However, in my opinion, there is a small problem with that scenario. Even if we defeat Kil'jaeden on Iron Horde Draenor, we'd still have to deal with Kil'jaeden on our planet. So what kind of challenge or how much fun would it be to face him twice? Just imagine that we already defeated him in one expansion. What kind of a threat could he still be after we return home? This is just my take on it. For all we know, they are going to use the Burning Legion. We are going to see a full powered Kil'jaeden. We'll just have to wait to find out.
Mortal heroes, your victory here today was foretold long ago. My brother's anguished cry of defeat will echo across the universe, bringing renewed hope to all those who still stand against the burning crusade. As the Legion's final defeat draws ever nearer, stand proud in the knowledge that you have saved worlds without number from the flame.
The story of Archimonde does not begin with Archimonde himself. It begins with the Titans and Sargeras. The Titans had a mission to bring order to the universe. They shaped the worlds, they created life, and took out those who were against their vision. The Titans were led by the Pantheon, and their champion was called Sargeras, and his task was defending their mission against the darkness of the universe. He imprisoned countless of demons, dreadlords, and all kinds of evil creations. He performed this duty for thousands of years, but over time he began to doubt. If the universe was supposed to be all about order, then why was it fighting the Titans so much? Why was there so much evil and chaos in the world? Was that perhaps the way it's supposed to be? He talked with the other members of the Pantheon about this, but they couldn't help him. They weren't able to convince him of the truth of their mission, and Sargeras left the Pantheon. The corruption within himself, the doubt and despair, they started to manifest on the outside. Great flames burst forth out of his body, and Sargeras decided that the Titans' their mission was folly. That order was not the way to go, and that chaos was the only truth of the universe. His mission was no longer to protect the work of the Titans, quite the opposite. His mission became to destroy their work. In order to do that, he would need an army, so he made his way to the demons that he had imprisoned and he set them free. The demons, in return, were more than willing to join his army, and the Burning Legion was created. Sometime after this, Sargeras found a planet called Argus, and on this planet were very powerful beings, namely the Eredar. The Eredar were ruled by three leaders, namely Velen, Archimonde and Kil'jaeden. Sargeras wanted them into his army, so he made contact with the leaders and he showed them a future in which they would receive incredible power, knowledge beyond their imagination, and planets full of loving subjects who would worship and honor them. Archimonde and Kil'jaeden were directly on board with this plan. They were taken away by Sargeras and his powers. But the prophet Velen felt like something wasn't quite right. He meditated on this problem, and the Naaru showed him the truth of the vision. The loving subjects were actually demons. The powers given would transform them into unnatural beings, and the planets they would come across would be destroyed. Velen saw that if they joined Sargeras, that the universe would be doomed, so he talked to his fellow leaders and showed them the truth. To his surprise, they didn't care about the truth. He had perhaps expected this from Archimonde, since he could sometimes easily be swayed if people played on his vanity. But Kil'jaeden, he had expected more of him. Kil'jaeden was the stronger one, he was decisive and he was wise, which is why Velen felt closer to Kil'jaeden, but even he was not convinced. They told Velen that this was just a vision in his mind, not a certain truth, and Velen realized that they now belonged to Sargeras. With the help of the Naaru, Velen managed to gather as many of his people as he could, and he was ready to escape the planet. Unknown to him was that Sargeras had already started to turn some of his people, and they nearly killed Velen and his followers. Only because of the Naaru was Velen able to escape the planet with his people, and Kil'jaeden was not happy about this. He took Velen's betrayal very personal, especially since they were so close, and he promised that he would find them and destroy them, even if it took 1,000 years. While Kil'jaeden kept himself busy with chasing the Draenei, Archimonde worked on serving his new master. Countless planets were waiting to be conquered, and he took great joy out of destroying each and every one of them. For countless years the Legion would move from planet to planet without much resistance, until Sargeras found a planet known as Azeroth. This story takes place around 10,000 years ago, and they call this the War of the Ancients. This story is told in 3 pretty thick novels, so I'll have to keep the story short and focus it on Archimonde. In this time period, the Night Elves were the most sophisticated race on Azeroth. They wielded powerful magic given to them by the Well of Eternity. We don't know much about the well, where it came from or why it was created, but what we do know is that it was a great source of power. The Night Elves were ruled by Queen Azora, and she, together with her advisor Xavius and the Highborn, made first contact with Sargeras. They had been reckless with their magic, trying to draw more and more power from the well, and this had drawn the attention of the Legion. When Xavius called for his queen to inspect their portal, Sargeras called out to her, mesmerized her, and told her that he was coming. From that moment on, Azora was taken away by Sargeras. She envisioned his arrival as cleansing the world of any imperfections, turning it into something as perfect as she was. She even dreamed of ruling at Sargeras' side and becoming his queen. The portal that they had created was not strong enough to transport Sargeras to Azeroth, so they had to make it bigger. They also couldn't instantly teleport all of the Legion for a massive invasion. It happened in stages. First they sent the Houndmaster Khadgar. Then they sent Mannoroth, and they had the plan of sealing the well from all the other Night Elves. This way they could focus all the power from the Well of Eternity on the portal, but naturally this caused some resistance. The Night Elves were no longer able to use their magic to their full potential, so they moved to the palace to ask the queen what was going on. As the doors opened, the demons who were able to step through the portal marched out and they killed everything in sight. Queen Azora didn't care that her people had to be murdered. She only cared about Sargeras and their perfect world, and she saw this as cleansing the world and getting it ready for Sargeras. The rest of the Night Elves who weren't part of Azora's plans, they didn't just sit on their hands. A resistance was formed with thousands of Night Elves ready to save their queen. They loved her so much that they couldn't understand that it was their own queen who willingly led them all to their slaughter, so they placed the blame on Xavius and the other Highborn. Those that did realize what was going on, like Malfurion, Tyrande, Illidan, they played a key role in the resistance. Malfurion's skills as a druid allowed him to defeat Xavius, and he closed the portal that Mannoroth had created, halting the Legion's invasion, but he didn't completely stop it. Too many demons had flowed through the portal already to instantly take back their cities, and this gave Mannoroth enough time to reopen the portal and admit his failure to Sargeras. Except that the voice that replied to him from the other side of the portal, it was not Sargeras, but his left-hand man Archimonde. Sargeras was very disappointed in Mannoroth, and it was time to bring out the big guns. Archimonde was a tactical mastermind with plenty of troops to spare, while the Night of Resistance had a very few strong players, but the troops were limited. Archimonde made good use of this. He trapped the Night Elves a couple of times, but what he didn't count on was that the dragons would aid the Night Elves. The dragon aspects had of course noticed what happened to the world, and it was Deathwing, by order of the Old Gods, who came up with a plan to create the Dragon Soul. A tiny disc fueled by a small portion of each aspect's their power, which would allow them to banish the Legion from Azeroth. What the aspects didn't know was that Deathwing was crazy and he was under the control of the Old Gods. He convinced the others to give up a portion of their power, while he kept all of his power to himself, making him stronger than the other aspects. Archimonde had calculated on maybe a few of the dragons showing up to fight, but the full might of 5 dragonflights was something he didn't see coming. When Deathwing arrived on the battlefield, he used the disc on the Legion and the Night Elves cheered while the demons retreated. Then Deathwing's madness took over, and he also used the disc against the Night Elves' resistance and even his fellow dragons. In his mind, all the world was against him, and they should all bow down to his power. He nearly wiped out the entire blue dragonflight, but using the Dragon Soul did not come without consequences, and Deathwing's body began to crack. The madness within him now started to show on the outside, so he left them all to fight over the world while he went to his cave and repair himself. Whoever won the war, Deathwing didn't care if it was the Burning Legion or the Night Elves. Either one of them would bow down to his immense power, and with that he left the battlefield. Deathwing and the Demon Soul, as they now called the Disc, they were a problem for the future. For now, the Night Elf army had the hold against the Legion. Their commander, Lord Ravencrest, had been murdered, so Lord Destel Stareye took command over the resistance. Stareye was a noble, a fool, and he lacked the tactical mind of Ravencrest. Archimonde made full use of this, and he had his army retreat, and Stareye thought that his tactics were working, that they were able to push the Legion back. In his arrogance, he forgot to look up in the sky where massive amounts of Doomguards were flying over the troops, and in their hands they held pots with red liquid. They poured the liquid over the army, and anything that it touched died a horrible death with flesh melting away. Jared's Shadow Song tried to warn Stareye about what was going on, and he urged him to take command, reform the lines, and shoot the demons from the sky. Stareye, however, was stunned with seeing so much death around him and knowing that his tactics had failed. Up in the sky, Jared saw more Doomguard coming, and he tried to pull Stareye away. Realizing that the commander wouldn't move, he turned his mount around and he rode off just in time before the liquid killed Stareye and all those around him. Archimonde's tactics could have crushed the Night Elves right there, but Jared unwillingly took command of the host. He ordered archers to shoot down the Doomguards, and he reformed the lines, holding the land against the Legion. Now the Night Elves had a chance again. They had a commander not placed in his position because of his title or his status, but because he had a good mind on his shoulders and was able to lead. That did not mean that the victory would come easy, since the demons returned to the battlefield with even more numbers than before. The Legion had countless soldiers living for the pleasure of torment and battle, and Archimonde was not afraid to use them all. This meant that the Night Elves needed new allies, and Malfurion Stormrage had talked with his teacher, the demigod Cenarius, about asking the other demigods for help. It took a very long time to convince the demigods to join the war effort, but when they did, they killed hundreds, thousands of demons. Being demigods did not make them invincible though, and as each demigod fell to the Legion, Cenarius pushed himself harder to make up for their loss. It seemed like Cenarius himself would fall to the endless numbers of the Legion, but his father Malorn stepped up and saved his life. He raced through the battlefield and he gave the Night Elves a chance to drag Cenarius back. Upon doing so, Archimonde himself entered the battle and he fought with this powerful demigod. Malorn is a white stag and he charged Archimonde with his antlers. He even gave him a good fight, but in the end Archimonde managed to place Malorn in a headlock. He slowly twisted the demigod's head in an awkward angle. A tremendous cracking sound echoed through the region, one that for just a brief moment caused all other noises to cease. Archimonde had killed Cenarius' father. In response, Malfurion unleashed his untapped powers as he tried to avenge the father of his mentor. Great vines spread around Archimonde, which didn't bother him at first. He ripped the small vines, he tried to throw them away, only to see the vines grab onto him again. More and more vines seized his body and he tried frantically to rip them away. Malfurion kept his eyes on the Demon Lord as he repeated his spell, and Archimonde realized that he couldn't free himself, so he clapped his hands and he vanished in a great ball of green fire. So great was Archimonde's power, and Malfurion felt like he had failed his teacher. Malfurion was able to send Archimonde away from the battlefield, at least for the moment, but he didn't vanquish him. Near the end of the story, Sargeras was very close to entering Azeroth, and Archimonde realized that he had failed his master. He would be punished, just like Mannoroth would be punished, but that didn't mean that he would just sit and wait for it to happen. He was going to entertain himself, vent some of his rage upon those who foolishly thought that they could stand against the might of the Legion. Archimonde returned to the battlefield once more, killing demons, night elves, dragons, anything that stood in his path. Jared Shadowsong saw the giant approaching, and although he knew that he wouldn't stand a chance, he was not about to surrender. He drew his blade and said, "I await you, Archimonde," and the archdemon laughed. To his credit, Jared stood his ground while Archimonde beat him senseless, and Jared himself wasn't even able to touch the Demon Lord. What they didn't know was that Malfurion and several others had made their way to the Well of Eternity, and they managed to use the Demon Soul to reverse the portal. This did not only stop Sargeras from entering Azeroth, but it also sucked the Legion back to where it came from. The Legion, Mannoroth, Archimonde, none of them stood a chance against the power of the Well. As a side effect, the Well was imploding and the land land of Kalimdor was about to split apart. The Night Elves fled all the way to Mount Hyjal as the world reshaped itself and turned into how we know it as today. Before this happened, Illidan managed to fill a couple of vials with water from the original well, and he used this on a lake of water to create a new well. The Night Elves had just ended a war against the Legion. A war started because of the original well and dabbling in magic, so they were not happy about this. They wanted to execute Illidan on the spot, but his brother Malfurion pleaded for his life and they imprisoned him instead. To turn this curse into a blessing, the Dragon Aspects decided to plant the World Tree Nordersail over the new well, and they gave it their blessing. For as long as the tree would stand, the Night Elves would be immortal, time would be at their side, and they would have a chance to learn. Before they imprisoned Illidan, he warned them that the Legion would return, that they would thank him one day for creating this well, and that they would need him once more. His warning would become a reality, since Sargeras still wanted to conquer the world, and during Warcraft 3, the Legion returns. Archimonde's brother Kil'jaeden had sent Ner'zhul to Azeroth to start weakening the world and getting it ready for their invasion. Ner'zhul recruited Kel'Thuzad into his army, and Kel'Thuzad created the Cult of the Damned. This cult worked on spreading the plague through Lordaeron, which would not only kill its citizens, but also turn them into the undead, turn them into Scourge, and make them servants of the Legion. Eventually even Arthas would become a Death Knight, and he resurrected Kel'Thuzad into a Lich. They moved to Dalaran, stole the Book of Medivh, and they summoned Archimonde into the world.
Come forth, Lord Archimonde. Enter this world and let us bask in your power. Tremble, mortals, and despair. Doom has come to this world. You have done well, little Lich. My plan worked perfectly.
Lord Archimonde, all the preparations have been made.
Very well, Tichondrius. Since the Lich King is of no further use to me, you Dreadlords will now command the Scourge.
As you wish, Lord Archimonde.
Soon, I will order the invasion to begin. But first, I will make an example of these paltry wizards by crushing their city into the ashes of history.
This has got to be a joke. What happens to us now?
Be patient, young Death Knight. The Lich King foresaw this as well. You may yet have a part to play in his grand design.
Agir, Hyjal, Nutarus. Agir, Modas, Betalum. Daltaro, Ildas, Glaku. Retum Setharas Amanar, Gul'damus. Belar Sumaris, Azaratha, Rakas, Ilkula. Belanora, Mordanos Melar, Il amor no falos Khadgar.
Archimonde placed the Dreadlord Tichondrius in charge of the Forsaken Army, and he destroyed Dalaran as a display of power. This placed Arthas at Kel'Thuzad out of the picture for now, and Archimonde had learned his lesson from the first invasion. There were defenses on Azeroth that he needed to be careful of, and he ordered Mannoroth to take out the demigod Cenarius. For this task, Mannoroth decided to use the Orcs who once served Kil'jaeden, and he enslaved them once more. Grom Hellscream and his warriors were chopping trees in Ashenvale, and this angered Cenarius and made him appear. He destroyed the Orcs their base, and it looked like he was too powerful for even Grom Hellscream. One of the witch doctors in his army sensed a powerful dark power within the forest, which led the Orcs to a pool full of Mannoroth's blood. When they found the pool, the witch doctor warned Grom not to drink. One of his warriors told him that this was against all that Thrall had tried to change, but Grom didn't listen. He embraced the powers from the pool, used them to kill Cenarius, and in the process placed his people in chains.
Though you Orcs failed the Burning Legion before, you will now serve us once again. No. We are free.
Now they were servants of the Legion again, just like they were back on Draenor. Thankfully for Grom, Jaina, Proudmoore and Thrall were told by the Prophet Medivh that they had to work together to stand against the Legion, and Jaina helped Thrall cleanse Grom from the demon's corruption. Afterwards, Grom and Thrall they teamed up, they found Mannoroth, and Grom killed the Pit Lord, setting his people free and killing himself in the process. Archimonde didn't care about losing Mannoroth since his mission was a success. Mannoroth had killed the demigod Cenarius, opening the way further for the invasion.
The undead are tireless. There's no way to outrun them.
You see, Lord Archimonde, we need not fear the Night Elves. The Scourge can...
Archimonde, after 10,000 years, how is it possible?
The Legion has returned to consume this world, woman. And this time, your troublesome race will not stop us. Fools! Let her slip away! Find her, damn you! Find her and kill her!
The day we have long feared has finally come. The Burning Legion has returned. I must cross the river and warn the rest of my sisters before all is lost.
Tyrande moved to awaken Malfurion from the Emerald Dream to help against the Legion's invasion. She also decided that it was a good idea to release Illidan from his prison, hoping that he would help them against the Legion. Illidan's love for Tyrande was so strong that even after 10,000 years of rotting away in jail, he still agreed to help her.
It has been an eternity, brother. An eternity spent in darkness.
Illidan, you were sentenced to pay for your sins, nothing more.
And who are you to judge me? We fought the demons side by side, if you recall.
Enough of this, both of you. What is done. My love, with Illidan's help, we will drive the demons back once again and save what is left of our beloved land.
Have you even considered the cost, Tyrande? This betrayer's aid may doom us all before the end. I will have nothing to do with this.
Malfurion wasn't okay with Tyrande's plan of setting Illidan free, so Illidan moved away from them and decided to do it on his own. He met with the Death Knight Arthas, who pointed him towards the skull of Gul'dan. The skull was being used by the Dreadlord Tichondrius to corrupt the forest, and its powers would give Illidan the strength to defeat him.
Foul demon! What have you done with my brother?
It is I, Furion. This is what I've become.
No. Illidan, how could you?
The leader of the undead has been destroyed, and the forests will heal in time.
At the cost of your soul? You are no brother of mine. Be gone from this place, and never set foot in our lands again.
So be it, brother.
By absorbing the skull, Illidan transformed and he looked so demonic that his own twin brother didn't even recognize him. The powers granted by the skull did allow him to kill a dreadlord and he did save the forests, but still, Malfurion and Tyrande, they condemned his actions and they banished him from their lands. This had cost them a powerful ally, but thankfully Thrall and Jaina would arrive to offer their help. In a dream, the prophet Medivh had summoned them all together. He had summoned Malfurion and he explained his history with the Legion and his plan of stopping their invasion. Orcs, humans and Night Elves would have to team up. They would have to put away their differences, their hatred towards each other, for the greater good. They knew that Archimonde would make his way to the World Tree Nordrassil. There he could absorb the powers from the well, and while he did this he could also take away the Night Elves' immortality. Malfurion knew that they could never take Archimonde head on, so he came up with a plan. Each faction would do his job and they would slow down Archimonde. This would give Malfurion the time to summon the Guardians of the Forest.
You are very brave to stand against me, little human. If only your countrymen had been as bold, I would have had more fun scouring your wretched nations from the world.
Is talking all you demons do?
Stormrage, show yourself! Or do you intend to have mortal girls do all your fighting for you? You orcs are weak and hardly worth the effort. I wonder why Mannoroth even bothered with you.
Our spirit is stronger than you know, demon. If we are to fall, then so be it. At least now, we are free.
The wretched little whelp actually hurt me. Are there none left to stand against the Legion? This is almost too easy. If I had known that this mortal resistance would be so weak, I would have launched this invasion centuries ago.
Archimonde's victory here has made him overconfident. He will not see the trap that I laid for him until it is too late.
At last, the way to the World Tree is clear. Witness the end, you mortals. The final hour has come.
It was Archimonde's arrogance that had him believe that he easily defeated the defenses of the world. He didn't pay attention to the small wisp gathering, and he had his eyes only on the World Tree Nordrassil. A thousand wisps detonated simultaneously, blowing up Archimonde as well as the World Tree. This cost the Night Elves their immortality, but it also stopped the Legion's invasion of Azeroth. A small price to pay for the survival of the world. Does this mean that Archimonde's story is completely done? Well, it is for the moment, but we also know that certain demons can never be killed on our planet. The only way to truly end them is killing them within the Twisting Nether. Is that the case for Archimonde? Well, we don't know, but it leaves a window open for Blizzard if they ever want to bring him back into the story. I'll leave it up to you to decide if that's a good thing or not. Is it possible that we will see Archimonde in Warlords of Draenor? It's possible, but much like Kil'jaeden, the question is, How big of a threat would Archimonde be? We already defeated him once in Warcraft 3 and once in the Caverns of Time. Does that leave any kind of challenge if you know that you've defeated him before? My personal take on it is that Archimonde would be an awesome fight, especially if they would team him up with someone like Gul'dan or maybe even Mannoroth. That would be brilliant. I don't really care that I've defeated him before, since last time we had to blow up a tree, we had to gather 3 different armies, we had to destroy the Night Elf's immortality to destroy Archimonde. Imagine what a fight it could be if we don't have any tricks, just us against this demon lord. I would love to see it, but again, that's just my take on it. The story of Velen the Prophet and his Draenei is a very long story. He and his people have been around for quite a while, so I might not be able to get all the details in, but I'll sure as hell try. The story begins around 20,000 years ago, and to put it in perspective, the Well of Eternity didn't explode until around 10,000 years ago. Give or take a few years by now. The Draenei called themselves Eredar back then, and in the time they lived on the planet named Argus. Their leaders were called Archimonde, Kil'jaeden, and Velen the Prophet. Now these 3, they were not just leading together, they were like soul brothers, man. They were so evolved that they could communicate and share visions with their minds. And yeah, they were just very, very close. And Velen was the only one with the gift of sight. Now one day on the planet of Argus, they received a visit from Sargeras. He found great potential in the Eredar and he promised them the universe. Worlds to explore, people to adore them, knowledge from far and wide just for them to study. All they had to do was pledge their loyalty to Sargeras. Now Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, they were directly on board with this plan, but to Velen, something didn't quite feel right. He went to the Atamal crystal, a gift to his people from a time long forgotten, and he meditated about this. At first he saw the same vision as Sargeras had promised them, but then the vision changed to show his true plans. In this real vision, Velen looked at himself and the others, and he saw that they were transformed into horrific beings. The loving people that would follow them changed into demonic beings of the twisting nether. Worlds were aflame and the Burning Legion conquered them one by one. With this knowledge, with this truth in his mind, he went back to his brothers, but Archimonde and Kil'jaeden, they were already sold. They didn't put much value in Velen's visions, and even so, they simply didn't care. Velen realized that if they would pledge their loyalty to Sargeras, then the universe would fall. So desperately he prayed for help and received an answer from the Naaru, specifically the Naaru named Kur. The Naaru, beings of light and dead set on stopping the Burning Legion, told Velen to gather as many as he could. To help him with this task, Velen asked his trusted friend Talgaf to help him, and yeah, they gathered on a hill and they waited for rescue. In the meantime, Velen had taken the Atamal crystal with him, the Naaru had told him to do so, and in the distance he could see Talgaf. The crystal warned him that what he saw was not the truth, and in reality Sargeras had already begun with transforming the Eredar into Man'ari. Man'ari is the Eredar word for something twisted, unnatural, tainted by foul magic. Was it not for the crystal, Velen would not have seen the betrayal until it was way too late. His corrupted brothers and sisters slowly made their way towards the Gather group, and desperately Velen called to the heavens. And the heavens responded. A bright light hit the Atamal crystal and separated it in 7 individual crystals, all with a different color. A shield was formed around Velen and those that he had gathered, and above them a ship appeared. The Naaru had kept their word, and they told Velen to bring the 7 crystals with him, for he would surely need them. Just in time, the Eredar managed to escape the planet, and from that moment on, they would call themselves Draenei, also known as Exiled Ones.
The Naaru have not forgotten us.
Kil'jaeden took this betrayal of Velen very personal, and he swore that he would find him, even if it took 1,000 years. And so the chase was on. The Draenei would run, Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion would follow. Every time they came close, Velen would be warned, or one of the crystals would allow Velen and his people to escape in time. It's not explained what happened to the planets that they left behind, but it's not hard to imagine that the Burning Legion conquered them. This went on for a very long time, until around 200 years ago, the Draenei had to make a crash landing on the planet they would call Draenor. For some reason, the Naaru named Kur had fallen ill, so they couldn't use the ship anymore and they were stuck on the planet. It was Talgaf who found the Draenei again, and he told Kil'jaeden. This time Kil'jaeden had a better plan in mind. Instead of going in with his full force with the might of the Burning Legion and just to see the Draenei escape again, he decided to use another race that lived on Draenor. He decided to use the Orcs. He manipulated them into becoming a fighting force known as the First Horde. This also included offering the blood of his servant Mannoroth, which gave the Orcs incredible powers but also made them slaves. When the attack started, the Draenei were pretty confused. Before this, they weren't exactly allies with the Orcs, but they had been trading with them. There was even a moment where they saved the lives of 2 of these Orcs, and one of those Orcs was the father of Thrall, Enel's named Durotan, and the other was Orgrim Doomhammer. When Velen figured out what was going on, that Kil'jaeden was behind it, he tried to make peace with the Orcs. He ended up in front of Durotan and told him that he wanted to take them all to Oshu'gan. Oshu'gan was actually the ship that the Draenei crashed with, but over the years had become a sacred place to the Orcs. When Naaru fall ill or enter their death cycle, they enter a cycle called the Void, where they unwillingly suck up all the light that they can, including the souls of the departed. The Naaru Kur had befriended the souls of the departed Orcs, and he had inspired the shamans of the Orcs to take care of him. That made this place very sacred to the Orcs, and when Velen told them that this was because of the Draenei and the Naaru, well, that pissed them off. Imagine that the one that you are told is your enemy, the Draenei, is now telling you that your most sacred place is because of them. They weren't exactly happy with that. In fact, they were very insulted, and it took everything Durotan had to keep his people from murdering Velen on the spot. His orders were to deliver Velen to Ner'zhul, but because of their past, because the Draenei saved his life, and because he didn't exactly trust Ner'zhul, he decided to let Velen go. This action did not stop the Horde from marching on. It was their mission to kill every Draenei they could find, and near the end they were corrupted by fel magic, they were corrupted by demon blood, all kinds of vile things. The war would come to a conclusion with a final assault on Shafra city. The Draenei had made the plan to leave enough of their people behind so that Velen and some of the others could flee to Zangarmarsh and live another day. This pained Velen greatly because leaving his people behind is not something easy to do, but the Naaru assured him that he and his people had to survive. They still had a role to play in the army of light against the Burning Legion, so they had to survive. The Orcs, they sacked the city. The Draenei who stand behind sacrificed their life, and their plan went as good as they hoped. Kil'jaeden believed all the Draenei to be dead, and he left the Orcs to their fate. The planet of Draenor was all but destroyed, the use of fel magic had corrupted the land as much as it had the Orcs, food and water was becoming a rare thing, and all of this led to the first Orcish invasion of Azeroth. For Velen and his people, times were not any easier. Some of the Draenei who had stayed behind in Shafra, they managed to survive. During the battle, a strange red mist entered the city, and the effects of it only became clear later on. What happened was that some of the Draenei that had breathed in this mist, they started to devolve. And they started to devolve into the form known as the Broken. Not only did their bodies change, they also had trouble with speaking, with thinking, and to a race like the Draenei that was so highly evolved, that fate was just horrible, man. You would imagine that the other Draenei would be very happy with some of these survivors, because at this point in time there weren't that many Draenei left. What happened instead is that they decided to send all the broken away and separate them from the healthy ones. They feared that their condition was somehow contagious, and so they just sent them all away to their separate camps. Amongst those broken that they sent away was a former paladin named Nobundo. And not only did he turn into a broken, he also lost his connection to the light. Years he tried to reconnect, but instead he received an answer from a completely different source. This source was the elements, once allies to the shamans of the Orc, and they now came to Nobundo. They offered him their power, their allegiance, in return for his respect for the elements. Years of training with the elements would follow, and the day came that Nobundo returned to the people that had turned him away. He offered his wisdom of the elements, but still the Draenei wanted nothing to do with him. Only Velen the Prophet, who had received a vision of Nobundo, recognized him as part of the salvation for their people. And so the race of the Draenei, first only highly attuned to the light, now began their training in the ways of shamanism.
Not all who wander are lost.
Now this was not just an event that happened in a week, right? It took him years to learn the craft of shamanism. And in the meantime, the world around the Draenei didn't exactly stand still. Actually, some major events happened, but I'm going to have to keep this short to focus the story on Velen. The Horde tried to invade Azeroth, but they were pushed back and the portal was closed behind them. Ner'zhul opened several rifts to different worlds, causing Draenor to nearly destroy itself and turning it into Outland as we know it today. Mag'Faredon used those rifts to summon more demons, and he proclaimed himself as Lord of Outland. Khadgar looked for help with his Burning Legion problem, and the Naaru, led by Hyjal, aided them to take Shafra city. Now sometime after the destruction of Draenor, the Naaru brought the Tempest Keep to Outland. In Azeroth, the events of Warcraft 3 took place. Arthas assaulted Silvermoon City, nearly wiping out all the High Elves, and used the Sunwell to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. This action destroyed the Sunwell, and it cut the High Elves of their source for magic. They would now start to call themselves Blood Elves, and Kael'thas Sunstrider was the leader. Kael'thas would eventually ally himself with Lady Vashj, and later would ally with Illidan, whose story would take them back to Outland. There they teamed up with another broken named Akama, and together they sealed the rifts that McFerrin was using, and this was to prevent him from getting any more forces in. They eventually imprisoned McFerrin, and Illidan took over the Black Temple. This wasn't exactly what Akama had in mind, so he waited until we arrived to overthrow Illidan, but that's a different story. Now those are the events in a very short version, and at this point Illidan is under the command of Kil'jaeden, and he was told to stop Arthas from merging with the Lich King. He failed in his mission, and together with Kil'jaeden and Lady Vashj, they returned to Outland and they started to prepare a defense against Kil'jaeden. Now for some reason, this could be because of Illidan, this could be because of Kil'jaeden himself, but at some point they sent his troops to assault Shafra city, which as I said was in the hands of Adal. The Blood Elf troops that he sent were under the leadership of Vorinnfal the Seer. However, Vorinnfal had received a vision which showed him that the only hope for his race to survive did not lie with Kil'jaeden, but with Adal. As they arrived at Shafra, they laid down their weapons and they pledged their allegiance to Adal and the Naaru, which was a heavy blow for Kil'jaeden because these were some of his finest troops. Another assault from Kil'jaeden and his troops was on the Tempest Keep. They wanted to use its technology for their own benefit, and inside the keep they only found a Naaru named Muru to defend it. Kil'jaeden easily captured the Naaru, and he sent them to Silvermoon City, where they would use its power of the light to empower paladins of the Blood Elves, and these paladins were also known as Blood Knights. Lady Liadrin was the first to do this, and so she became their leader. After the Blood Elves had taken over the Tempest Keep, Velen decided that it was time to search for a new place to take refuge. Together with Nobundo and the rest of his people, he personally led an assault on the Tempest Keep, specifically the part known as the Exodar. They took control of the ship, but the Blood Elves figured out what they were doing and they sabotaged it. This caused the ship to spin out of control through the twisting nether until it landed on a planet known as Azeroth.
1 month ago, a terrible explosion tore open the skies above northern Kalimdor. At that moment, the great ship Exodar plummeted from the heavens and crashed upon the world of Azeroth. Having fled the ravaged world of Outland, the noble Draenor used the dimension-traveling Exodar to reach safe haven. Inspired by tales of the heroic alliance that stood against the might of the Burning Legion, the Draenor have come to enlist aid in retaking their shattered homeland. Dedicated to preserving life and upholding the tenets of the Holy Light, the Draenor hope to gather a new coalition of warriors to battle the Burning Legion and put a halt to its horrific burning crusade. Armed only with courage and their unshakable faith in the light, the Draenor look forward to finding the Alliance and ushering them towards the destiny that awaits beyond the skies of Azeroth.
This brings us to the events of the Burning Crusade, where the story takes us to the Tempest Keep. In the meantime, Kil'jaeden has changed his allegiance since Illidan has gone rather crazy after his defeat by the hands of Arthas. Kil'jaeden no longer serves Illidan, he now serves Kil'jaeden. We fight with him of course, but we don't exactly finish him off. He somehow manages to survive the assault and he sends his new troops, the Fellbloods, to attack his own city of Silvermoon and bring the Naaru Muru to the Sunwell Plateau. This attack leads to Lady Liadrin to seek a new source of power for her and the Blood Knights. She travels to Shafra city to visit the Naaru Adal, and she begs him for forgiveness for what they had done with Muru. Adal reveals that the events were prophesied by Velen long ago. Silvery moon, washed in blood, led astray into the night, armed with the sword of broken light. Broken, then betrayed by one, standing there bestride the sun. At darkest hour, redemption comes, a knightly lady sworn to blood. It was no mistake that Muru was the only Naaru left in the Tempest Keep, and all events happened exactly as they were supposed to. I see it clearly now. I renounced my loyalties to the House Sunstrider and its false prince. I pledged the blades of my Blood Knights to the defeat of Kil'jaeden and the restoration of Silvermoon. We will fight beside you, Adal. Draenor and Blood Elf band together to stop Kil'jaeden and the summoning of Kil'jaeden. Along the way, we encounter Muru again and we're forced to fight him. In the end, we manage to stop Kil'jaeden, and this is the point where we see Velen again.
Not all who wander. Mortal heroes, your victory here today was foretold long ago. My brother's anguished cry of defeat will echo across the universe, bringing renewed hope to all those who still stand against the Burning Crusade. As the Legion's final defeat draws ever nearer, stand proud in the knowledge that you have saved worlds without number from the flame. Just as this day marks an ending, so too does it herald a new beginning. The creature Entropius, whom you were forced to destroy, was once the noble Naru, Mu'uru. In life, Mu'uru channeled vast energies of light and hope. For a time, a misguided few sought to steal those energies.
Our arrogance was unpardonable. We damned one of the most noble beings of all. We may never atone for this sin.
Then fortunate it is that I have reclaimed the noble Naru's spark from where it fell. Where faith dwells, hope is never lost, young blood elf.
Can it be?
Gaze now, mortals, upon the heart of Mu'uru. Unblemished, bathed by the light of creation, just as it was at the dawn. In time, the light and hope held within will rebirth more than this mere fount of power. Mayhap they will rebirth the soul of a nation.
Blessed ancestors! I feel it. So much love. So much grace. There are no words. Impossible to describe.
Salvation, young one. It waits for us all. Farewell.
He has taken the core of the defeated Narumuru and he uses it to restore the Sunwell to its former glory, saving the Blood Elf race from their addiction, and in time they will heal.
Empowered by the holy light and the undying strength of their convictions, the Draenor led the charge against the demonic Burning Legion in Outland. Now, with the Legion's defeat, they have completed the desperate mission that first brought them to Azeroth. Though some Draenor were sent back to Outland to revitalize their former civilization, the majority have vowed to remain and uphold their sacred commitment to the Alliance. Driven by a powerful vision, the immortal prophet Velen believes that a great war between the darkness and the light is fast approaching, and that Azeroth will be its principal battleground. As one of Velen's chosen, you must stand bravely before the shadow and ensure that your people are ready for the war to come.
That's the end of the Burning Crusade story, and unfortunately after that we don't see a whole lot of Velen or the Draenor. He makes an appearance every now and again, but nothing really important. Outside of the game, in the novels and in the stories, we learn that he has taken Anduin Wrynn under his wing and he teaches him the ways of the light. In Velen's short story on the WoW website, he receives a vision about Anduin leading the army of light. Instead of the prince, an armored warrior stood before him, his plate helm and breastplate shining with the essence of the light itself. The warrior wielded a sword forged from the same material as the armor, held it aloft as he perched on an outcropping. Whether it was on another world or Azeroth, Velen couldn't quite tell. And suddenly the dark sky above erupted with the combined chivalry of Azeroth's races. The Blood Elves, Orcs, Trolls, Tauren, and even the accursed undead and scheming goblins rode flying mounts of every sort and description. They were armored and armed in magical weaponry, glowing with so much power it hurts Velen's eyes to look at them. Besides the legions of the Horde, the ancient Night Elves charged with humans, dwarves and gnomes, whose ancestors formed the original alliance. And the shape-changing Worgen were united with them. Velen's own Draenor bolstered the army, their ranks adorned in otherworldly metals and bearing crystalline maces and swords. The Alliance and Horde were not alone. Dragons swooped and soared in formations that made the sky resemble a giant multicolored reptilian wing. They blanketed the horizon with their physical size and numbers, and when they roared a challenge, it shook not just the earth Velen stood on, but the universe as well. And yet, for all this, the greatest shock to Velen's senses came as he saw those that flew just beyond the army of dragons. The Naaru had taken the field, so many that Velen didn't understand how creation could contain them. The power of these beings of light filled Velen's heart with hope, swept away the lonely centuries, and left him wonder that he could ever despair, that the dark, no matter how terrible, could ever truly reign. And then a shadow fell. It was vast and empty and swallowed all light that entered it. Velen knew it would be all-consuming until at last it would turn and devour itself, endlessly gnawing on nothing in the great dark beyond, removing all meaning from the universe, from the most heartbreaking sonata to the most arresting sunset. It was too terrible to see, to comprehend, and yet the army headed straight for it, and the light began to fade. Right now, Aegwynn is just a priest, and in my opinion he still needs a whole lot of story development if they're ever going to make him lead the army. With that said, the vision is there, the prophecy is there, and we know where the story will take us. As I told you all at the start, Velen and the Draenei are very old, and he and his people have been through a lot. Still to this day, they try to stop their fallen brothers from destroying the universe. Together with the Alliance and the Horde, they prevented Kil'jaeden from coming to our world, and in the future I'm sure they, the Naaru and the Light will play a vital role in the coming battles against the Legion. How the story will unfold? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. To understand the Guardians, we'll first have to go back and look at how the first humans became mages. Way back when, around 10,000 years ago, the Night Elves and the Highborn had the Well of Eternity, from which they drew their magical powers. They did this without caring about the consequences, and it drew the attention of the Burning Legion. Sargeras himself showed up, and Queen Azora wanted to summon him into our world so that Sargeras could destroy everything and reshape the world into perfection. She then envisioned ruling the world together with Sargeras, but things didn't go exactly as planned. Several races, and even the demigods and the dragon aspects, they teamed up to fight the Burning Legion, and in the end they managed to destroy the portal. This also caused the Well of Eternity to implode and the land of Kalimdor to split apart.
Illidan! The well is out of control!
Aye, it's been twisted and turned by too many spells. The fuss we, especially you, made with the portal was too much. The same spell that sent the Burning Legion back into their foul realm now works on the well. It's devouring itself and taking its surroundings with it. Fascinating, isn't it?
Not if we're caught up in it. Why weren't you running? What have you been doing with your hand in the well?
Illidan Stormrage was not a Highborn, but he did use magic, and before the well imploded he scooped up some water and put it in several vials. He then used this water on top of Mount Hyjal to create a second Well of Eternity. The Night Elves, they just lost everything because of reckless use of magic, and now another well was created. They first wanted to execute Illidan on the spot, but his brother Malfurion pleaded for him, and instead they imprisoned him for life. Several Highborn did not agree with Queen Azara's choices, and they joined the resistance before she was defeated. The Night Elves, they accepted the Highborn, but as you can imagine, they didn't want another War of the Ancients or a Sundering, so using arcane magic became a crime punishable by death. Davramar's Sunstrider was the one who led the Highborn away from Azora, and he wasn't happy about this. Magic was their birthright, they had been studying it for millennia, and they weren't about to give it up. The Night Elves, they just couldn't execute all of them, so they banished them instead, and the Highborn moved away from the Night Elves, across the sea, past the newly formed Maelstrom, all the way to the Eastern Kingdoms. They didn't leave empty-handed. Before they set sail, they made sure to take one of Illidan's vials full of water from the original Well of Eternity. It was around this time that they started to call themselves High Elves, and they first moved to the Tirisfal Glades. But after a few years, many of them were driven insane. They believed that something evil was under the Glades, we're not sure what, but they believed something evil, so they picked up their things and continued their journey. Along the way, they encountered the first primitive humans, but they didn't really interact with each other, while they also met the forest trolls of the Amai Empire, and they didn't get along with each other. The High Elves would soon start to hate the trolls, and the trolls didn't like them either. Eventually they found a place that was perfect for them, and they built their kingdom of Quel'Thalas. Unfortunately, they built this kingdom right on top a sacred and ancient city of the trolls, and this just fused the hatred between trolls and high elves even further. They became enemies, the trolls started to attack their city, and the high elves managed to defend it with the use of magic. By using the vial full of water from the Well of Eternity, they created their own well, and they called it the Sunwell. For thousands of years they lived in their city, practiced their magic, but they were careful about not attracting the attention of the Burning Legion. In the meantime, the humans started to band together. The trolls were also a problem for them, and it was Thoradin of the Arathi who came up with a plan to unite all the different human clans. They did this by defeating the other clans and then offering them peace and equality. So what they did pretty much was kick the crap out of other clans and then just offer them a safe haven. They eventually built their capital city called Strom and founded their first human kingdoms called Arafor. The Yamani Empire was huge, the biggest empire on the Eastern Kingdoms at the time, and the High Elves, they were losing their war. Something had to be done, so they sent one of their people to talk to the humans and see if they could form an alliance. Thoradin was wise, and he saw that letting the Elven Kingdom fall could mean their own defeat, so they agreed to team up. In exchange for the humans' troops, the High Elves would teach 100 humans the way of magic. The elves found that although humans were initially clumsy in the handling of magic, they possessed a startling natural affinity for it. 100 men were taught the very basics of the elves' magical secrets, no more than was absolutely necessary to combat the trolls. High elves and humans clashed with the trolls, and the trolls would eventually lose this war and never truly recover from their defeat.
The Yamani never give up. We never forget. We never die.
So at this point, humans could wield magic now, but the Magi felt like the laws of Strom were holding them back, so they split themselves away from the kingdom and they built their own city, namely Dalaran. A city where they would be free to study, practice and use their magic as they pleased. More and more Magi moved to Dalaran, and soon enough, those who couldn't wield magic, but did provide food or drinks or other services, they too moved to Dalaran. All was good for a time until they learned the dangers of magic used unchecked, the lesson the High Elves learned so many years ago. The constant and ungoverned use of magic began to tear the fabric of reality around the city. These tears sent bright beacons out into the twisting nether, drawing the attention of the Burning Legion. Through these rents, demons began to slip back into Azeroth, and the Magi consulted the High Elves about this problem. The High Elves told them that as long as they used magic, they would need to protect their people from the agents of the Burning Legion. The people couldn't find out about this, or else they would riot in fear, so they decided to create a secret order known as the Council of Tirisfal, named after the location where they would meet, the Tirisfal Glades. The order began to experiment as to how to best protect themselves from the demons. Some believed that they should work together as a team of equals, while others believed they should funnel their magic into a single being and let him or her be the shield, although they didn't exactly know how to do that. This finally brings us to how the First Guardian came to be. This story is set 260 years before the first war between orcs and humans. The Council of Tirisfal is formed and Irten Brighthand was their spearhead. He was the one that the other council members would link with, offer their powers and allow him to battle the demons. The problem with this method was that if one would fall or weaken, it would affect all of them, so the weakest chain could make them all fall. In the story, a Dreadlord has found his way into Dalaran, and they come up with a plan to lure him into a trap, using the Amulet of Water. The plan works perfectly, except that this is no ordinary Dreadlord. This is Khafre-Natir, a Dreadlord killed during the War of the Ancients by Malfurion Stormrage himself. The council tries to banish the demon, linking their power with Ertin, but it isn't enough. Khafre-Natir manages to land a strike against the undead mage Merrill, who was so focused on lending his powers that he couldn't defend himself. With Merrill down, the others are weakened, and Khafre was about to kill them all. A young student of Dalaran, Alodi, sees all of this going on, sees how they're all connected and linking their powers into one. His friends, Prince Naloroth and his fiancée Idre, can't even see this, but he does, and he steps in to protect all of them. Desperately, he wants to protect as well as attack, and Ertin offers his powers to Elodie. This allows Elodie to create a shield strong enough to deflect Khafra's attacks, and as soon as the demon touches his shield, it creates a huge explosion. All of them might have died that day from the uncontrolled powers, but Ertin used his last of his strength to absorb most of the impact and save them all. The next day, Elodie wakes up and Master Metal tells him what happened. Metal used to be a human, but he died during the Troll Wars. People still needed him, so he used his own magic to resurrect himself and keep himself alive. The demon was defeated for now, but definitely not vanquished, and he got his hands on the Amulet of Water, and with it he could corrupt Lordamer Lake. The council came together within Tirisfal Glades to discuss what to do next. Indus, a female gnome, told them that they had to select a new spearhead, but this wasn't so simple. Ertin possessed unique qualities, the skill to wield their linked power, the desire to defend, while also the wisdom to never turn against them. Afilar, a high elf female, suggested that they should just stop with trying to use this spearhead. They weakened themselves and all their spearheads so far had died. She saw it as a failing plan. Metal said that they already had found their new spearhead. Elodie had managed to wield their power purely by instinct, with a desire to protect all of them and the heart of a warrior longing to use it as a weapon. He suggested that Elodie was their guy, but the other members did not agree. They saw him as a high elf orphan, surely gifted, but also lazy and unexperienced. Despite that, Merrill took the boy under his wing, knowing that if he gave him a reason to excel, he definitely would. The boy studied hard, and together with Merrill, they worked on an improvement of the spell that they used to link with each other. This spell would allow them to link, but over a much greater distance. That way, the source of power could stay in a protective place, while the spearhead would fight and protect. All this studying took up nearly all of Elodie's time, and his fiancée was not happy about this. Elodie's needs and wishes had changed, while hers had not, and they were slowly growing apart. Several weeks later, the Dreadlord was spotted in Silverpine, and the council tried to stop him by using their magic individually. This failed horribly. They couldn't even penetrate his magical wards, while the demon summoned a great swarm of locusts and tried to burn the council. Most of them survived, but one of them had a great fear of bugs, Afilar, which caused her to freeze up and she was unable to protect herself. Again, Merrill told them that they needed their champion, and this time, seeing how Elodie has been working so hard, the council agreed. Elodie was invited to their secret meeting within the Tirisfal Glades, where the council explains who they were and what they were offering him. Becoming the spearhead wasn't something you just did. It would change you and your destiny forever. So Elodie couldn't immediately decide. He wanted some time to think, and in that time he talked to his fiancée. She just received news that her father passed away. Her mother was ill. The land was beset by swarming insects and vermins, while the wells had run dry. All of this was the work of the Dreadlord, and Elodie realized that he could save them all. He could protect the one he loved most, but in exchange he would have to let her go. Which he would, of course. That night the council got together and Elodie told them his decision. But instead of directly linking to each other and only giving a portion of their power, he wanted them to offer all their power for the duration of the fight. They would use the spell that he and Merrill had been working on, the one that would allow them to link from a great distance so they wouldn't have to worry about protecting themselves. To reflect this change, he would no longer be called their spearhead, instead he would become their guardian. Guardian of their power, their safety and their trust. Guardian of the defense of Azeroth. Merrill, Yuga, Indus, Rohar and Irar offered their powers willingly. Power we have, power we share, out of many into one. Elodie made his way to Brightwater Lake, where Khafra Natir was last seen. He knew that the Dreadlord was not just trying to corrupt the lake or spread a plague. He had a larger plan. The plan to put high elf, human and gnome against each other, so to cause wars which demons find so entertaining. Khafra was not impressed by the mage. They tried to contain him before, banish him, and they had failed. What difference would this one mage make? What he didn't know was that Elodie didn't come alone, and he used Indus's spell of bright vision to spot Khafra's aura of darkness. He used Yuga her spell to entrap Khafra within a magical ward. He asked Irar to lend him his strength so he could keep the ward active. He asked Mannoroth to share his courage so he could either face down this monster or accept his own death bravely. Then he asked all of them to combine their power and unleash every searing spell that they possessed so that they could banish this demon. This demon that had cost them so much, land destroyed, people killed, and Elodie's life as he knew it gone. This demon had turned him into a demon's nightmare, and at the end of their struggle, Elodie banished Khafra back to the twisting nether. His fiancée lived near the lake, saw everything that happened, and realized that Elodie had saved her, had saved all of them. Their duties were no longer the same, where she would have to stay behind and take care of her family and their land. Elodie was destined to take care of the world. Once more, Elodie tapped into the power of the council. Rohar, lend me your wisdom that I may do what is right. And with that, Elodie flew away from the love of his life and the life that he had known. He wanted to return his power to the rest of the council until the next battle, but they decided that he should keep it. When his time came, he would pass it on to the next guardian, who would take his place as defender of the world, with the council backing him up. This went on for centuries, where the guardian and the council worked in harmony. When Elodie's time was over, he passed on his powers to the next guardian. It's uncertain how many guardians defended Azeroth over the years, but what we do know is that at one point, Skevel became a guardian, and the guardian received the honorful title of Magna, which means protector in Dwarven. This story takes place around 882 years ago, and Magna Skevel's time was approaching, so he had to pick a new guardian from his 5 apprentices. 4 of these apprentices, they were men: Falric, Jonas, Manfred and Natalie, while Aegwynn was the only female. Back then, the social standing between males and females was not the same as it is today. Usually, females were taught to be pretty, learn skills like cooking or how to use herbs for healing. Basically, they got ready for a husband, but not something as independent as learning how to be a mage. Despite that, Aegwynn had become Skevel's apprentice, and she was the most gifted. She had managed to master the Metri scrolls, which were scrolls made by a powerful high elven mage thousands of years ago, and not even the high elves were able to master these until decades into their apprenticeships. This is the reason why Skevel recommended Aegwynn for being the next guardian. The other boys, the other apprentices, they thought that this was a stupid choice, that she was good for a woman, but they were men and true mages. Even the council said the following: "It is true," an older human said with a sigh, "that women are emotional and prone to excessive displays that are unbecoming of a mage. But it is also true that Aegwynn has the most potential of any of the youths that Skevel has found, and we cannot afford for the guardian to be anything less than the best, even if that means giving the position to a girl." At that, Aegwynn bristled. "With respect, good sirs, I will be as good as a mage as any of these boys. In fact, I think I would be better, because I had to overcome so much more to get here." The boys were still not happy. One of them tried to convince the council to pick him by turning stone into gold, but his spell failed and the council had decided. Besides, the older human added, the guardian must be the vessel of the council. I suspect that a girl will be less willful and will understand the chain of command, as it were. Now, as you can imagine, this wasn't exactly a great start for the new guardian and the council, but nonetheless, Aegwynn received Skevel's powers and took his place as the new guardian of Azeroth. Spells that used to take all her concentration now only took the briefest of thoughts, and she became incredibly powerful. They informed her about her mission, of course, defending the world against the demons, and she performed her duty. One day, a demon named Smotlor took over the school in the small village of Yortas. By accident, Aegwynn spotted his demonic magic, stepped in, killed him, and saved the children. She was then summoned by the council, who were not happy about her methods. She should have contained the demon instead of outright destroying him, so that they could use him for some information about Sargeras. Aegwynn couldn't believe it. What was she supposed to do? Just let the children be used? Killed even? She was fed up with the council their methods of being reactive instead of proactive. All they did was trying to react to the demonic threats, while Aegwynn believed that they should actively seek them out. The council reminded her that she was supposed to do as she was told, that the guardian was the arm of the council and that she should follow their orders. Aegwynn at this point was exhausted after all that fighting, and all she wanted was to get some sleep, so she asked the council if there was anything else and teleported away to the Violet Citadel. Instead of letting time take its course, Aegwynn decided to use her magic to keep herself from aging. The council would change over time, some would die and be replaced, even her former fellow students passed away, but Aegwynn didn't care about any of that. She believed the council to be a bunch of fools and she was the one who did all the work. This ego would become even bigger when she faced off against Sargeras, 500 years after she became the Guardian. In Northrend, demons were hunting dragons, and Aegwynn teleported to deal with them. She sent a massive bolt of power which struck the banner carrier of the demons, the one who held the severed head of a green dragon. This drew the attention of several demons, but they were no match for Aegwynn's power. The leader of the group told her that she was a fool. While she had been fighting with just a few of them, many more had been summoned down below. "You are an overconfident fool," screamed the demon. "All have come here while you have fought these few." "I know," said Aegwynn calmly. "You know," bellowed the demon with a throaty laugh. "You know that you are alone in the wilderness with every demon raised against you. You know?" "I know," said Aegwynn, and there was a smile in the voice. "I know you would bring as many of your allies as possible. A guardian would be too great of a target for you to resist." "And you came anyway, alone, to this forsaken place." "I know," said Aegwynn, "but I never said I was alone." Aegwynn snapped her fingers and the sky suddenly darkened, as if a great flock of birds had been disturbed and blocked the sun. Except they were not birds, they were dragons. Aegwynn had lured as many demons as possible, and the demons fell right into her trap. The dragons, combined with the Guardian, nearly wiped out all the demons present, but a few of them managed to summon the Avatar of Sargeras. This was not the real, fully powered Sargeras, since that would have taken a much larger portal with a lot more power. Nonetheless, even the Avatar was incredibly powerful, and the few remaining dragons quickly flew away. Aegwynn raised both hands and unleashed a shout, half curse and half prayer. A flaming rainbow of colors unseen on this world erupted from her palms, snaking upwards like a sentient strike of lightning. It struck like a dagger thrust in the center of Sargeras' chest. This attack took nearly everything that Aegwynn had, and it was successful as well. Even though Sargeras tried to undo her spell, he didn't succeed and his avatar was destroyed. Aegwynn's trap had been more successful than even she had imagined, but what she didn't know was that this was exactly what Sargeras had planned all along. His spirit was not destroyed and he infected Aegwynn's body, hiding away until the day would come where he would be able to infiltrate the council from within and destroy Azeroth's defenses against the Burning Legion. Aegwynn didn't notice, of course. She thought that she just defeated the leader of the Burning Legion himself, a freaking god, and this just made her more arrogant. She locked away the Avatar of Sargeras within the Tomb of Sargeras and protected the place with such powerful defenses that no magic from Azeroth could ever break open the tomb. After that moment, after defeating Sargeras, Aegwynn resumed her duties as the Guardian, while pretty much ignoring the council as much as she could. Around 107 years ago, the council had enough. They had summoned her several times already, which she ignored of course, but this time the summon was so powerful that it actually interrupted her own spellcasting. She showed up and the council told her that enough was enough. It's been 800 years since she first became the Guardian and it was time to pass on her powers. Time for the council to select a new Guardian. The magic she used to keep herself young was unstable, unreliable, and if she ever lost concentration, she could instantly turn to a real age and her powers would be lost. For once, she agreed with the council's suggestion, but she wasn't about to hand over the powers back to the council. As a final act of defiance, she told them that she would be the one to select a new Guardian. She traveled to Stormwind to the home of Nilas Aran, and Nilas was a very powerful mage who served the current king of Stormwind, Landen Rin. He was also not tied to the Council of Tirisfal, which made him the perfect candidate to father her child. She let him believe that he was able to seduce her, tame the Wild Guardian, while in truth she was the one using him. "But if you weren't impressed," said Nilas, his mind wrapping around what Aegwynn was saying. "If you didn't want me, then why did we?" Aegwynn provided the answer. "I came to Stormwind for one thing I could not provide for myself. A suitable father to my heir." "Yes, Nilas Aran, you can tell your fellow mages in the Order that you managed to bet the great and mighty Guardian. But you will also have to tell them that you provided me with a way of passing on my power without the Order having any further say in it. And take this solace: of all the mages, wizards, conjurers and sorcerers, you were the one with the most potential. Your seed will protect and strengthen my child and make him the vessel for my power. And when he is born and weaned, you will even raise him here, for I know he will follow my path. And even the Order would not want to miss that opportunity to influence him. And so, the next Guardian was created, namely Medivh, which means Keeper of Secrets in High Elven. Aegwynn placed her powers inside of him and left him with Nilas Aran so he could raise him and teach him. For his own protection, she stayed out of Medivh's life in case her enemies would find out that he was her child. Little did she know that the true enemy in this case was her own Arrogance. In her desire to poke in the Council's eye just one more time, she had created a vessel in which the spirit of Sargeras could manifest. The perfect pawn which could infiltrate the Council and weaken Azeroth's defenses against the Burning Legion. Medivh grew up together with Anduin Lothar and future King of Stormwind, Lane Rin. His powers, as well as Sargeras, lay dormant within him until he came of age. His powers unleashed abruptly and Sargeras awakened within him. His father tried to help him, but in the end he died and Medivh was in a coma for 20 years. We later find the spirit of Aran in Karazhan, and apparently he's been tortured, probably by Medivh or by Sargeras. We're not sure, but somehow his spirit ended up in Karazhan.
Please, no more! My son! He's gone mad! I'll not be tortured again!
At last, the nightmare is over.
Anduin Lothar watched over Medivh, and one day Medivh just woke up again and resumed his life. Not all the details about what he did in the time period are clear, but what we do know is that Medivh took up residence within the Tower of Karazhan, all the while battling with Sargeras inside of him, and slowly but surely Sargeras managed to take him over. Around that time, the Orcs' homeworld of Draenor was corrupted, and Kil'jaeden had left them to their fate. These Orcs were perfect for Sargeras' plan, since they could keep the world busy and weaken it so that the Burning Legion could come and conquer the planet. He contacted Gul'dan and told him about Azeroth, a world with water, food, plenty of things to kill, and he also told him that he would be rewarded with power. Power waiting for him within the Tomb of Sargeras. Remember that Aegwynn protected the tomb with magic from Azeroth. No magic on Azeroth could ever open the tomb. Gul'dan was from Draenor, and so his magic would be able to. The pact was made. Gul'dan and his orcs built the dark portal on Draenor, while Medivh made the portal on Azeroth and unleashed the orcs upon the worlds. Aegwynn found out about this, and she paid a visit to her son in Karazhan. There are two versions of this encounter that describe what happened, and they both tell it in a different way. But the essence is that Medivh had killed the council, and she figured out that Sargeras was inside her son. That she had been an arrogant fool, and instead of doing better than the council, she actually had opened the way for the demons to take over Azeroth. She wept in that moment. She didn't weep when her parents had died or when Medivh was born, but in that moment she cried and she wanted to die. In the novel Cycle of Hatred, she used her own magic to teleport herself away. This magic came from the spell that kept her young, and while she teleported, this also aged her a little. In The Last Guardian, Medivh himself teleports her away, since Sargeras is unable to actually kill her. Some part of Medivh prevents him from doing so, but either way, he didn't give her the sweet release of death, and she would have to live with the knowledge of what she had done. The blue dragon, Arcanagos, also paid a visit to Karazhan, warning Medivh that he was attracting the attention of powers beyond his understanding, and that a dark power wanted to use him. Medivh didn't listen, or perhaps Sargeras didn't care. Either way, he struck Arcanagos with such a spell so powerful that it burned him from within. Burned him and later turned him into Nightbane. This took so much power that Medivh had to go and rest. The Dark Riders, a group of mounted horsemen roaming the land in search of powerful artifacts, were also created by Medivh. They used to be merchants, foolish enough to try and sell fake magical artifacts to Medivh. You don't want to mess with a Guardian, especially one affected by Sargeras, and as punishment he turned them into the Dark Riders. Now they're forced to collect real artifacts and bring them back to Karazhan. Now back to the main story. Sometime after Medivh opened the Dark Portal, a young mage named Khadgar, which means trust in Dwarven, is sent from Dalaran to become Medivh's apprentice. There have been several potential apprentices before, but most of them didn't last long, either because of divisions within the tower or because of Medivh himself. Medivh was rather eccentric, At one moment he could be as calm as day, the next moment it would almost seem as if a storm was raging within him. Khadgar didn't immediately start out as an apprentice, he first became Medivh's assistant and he was charged with cleaning up the library. Medivh immediately recognized him for what he was, a spy sent by the mages of the Kil'jaeden to learn more about Medivh and the knowledge that he had. He didn't care about this, he was forthright about this, all open about it. He didn't care, not one bit, and he was willing to share all his information with Khadgar, as long as Khadgar would first show him what he was sending away. Khadgar would eventually reach apprentice status, and Medivh trained him in the ways of magic, turning him into a very skilled mage. More orcs were pouring through the dark portal every day, several mages were murdered, and Anduin Lothar tried to get information out of Khadgar about Medivh. Lothar was Medivh's childhood friend, and he had seen him fall into a coma. He was worried that Medivh might fall again, and he wanted to know what Khadgar thought about his teacher. Khadgar felt so loyal to Medivh and didn't tell Lothar all the details, but he promised him that if anything would come up, he would tell him. In the meantime, Khadgar was practicing his magic and he was trying to summon the visions within the Tower of Kil'jaeden. He had already received a couple of visions by accident. One of them showed an old man leading human troops on a planet with a red sky. No one in this vision could actually see Khadgar except for that one old man. They locked eyes and what he saw disturbed him greatly, for the old man's eyes were his eyes. Another accidental vision showed him Lothar, Medivh and Lane in a forest. Trolls attacked their party and they defended themselves with weapons and magic. At the end of the vision, Medivh collapses and he says not to Lothar, not to Lane, but he says specifically to Khadgar, "Watch out for me." This got him very curious about these visions and he even talked with Medivh about them, and Medivh told them that these visions come and go. That not all visions should be trusted, although up to this point, all visions have become a reality. This got him so curious that Khadgar started to work on a spell that would allow him to control them instead of seeing them randomly. In the meantime, the Orcish Horde had sent an emissary to talk with Medivh, to spy on him even, Garona half-Orcan. Khadgar didn't trust her at first, since he was an orc, but later they would battle the demon together. You can't help but become friends with someone who's willing to fight with you. They also talked about Medivh, his trust in them, while also being so eccentric. They talked about the Horde, the portal that led them into Azeroth, Gul'dan, and that Garona was indeed a spy, but that she no longer wanted to betray Medivh because of his trust in her. She felt so conflicted about who to report to, and Medivh was so open with her that she no longer wanted to betray him. Later we'll find out that there was even more going on between Garona and Medivh, but that's for next video. Either way, Garona was the one who came up with a plan to use Khadgar's vision spell and try to find out who opened the dark portal for the Horde. As they summoned the vision, they saw the following. Gul'dan was up on his knees, his hands clasped before him. "I shall do so, for yours in power most supreme. But who are you truly? And how will we reach this world?" The figure raised his hands to his hood and Khadgar shook his head. He didn't want to see it. He knew, but he did not want to see it. A deeply lined face, graying brows, green eyes that sparkled with hidden knowledge and something dangerous. Next to him, Garona let out a gasp. "I am the Guardian," said Medivh to the Orc Warlock. "I will open the way for you. I will smash the cycle and be free."
The time has come! Gul'dan, order your warlocks to double their efforts! Moments from now, the gateway will open, and your horde will be released upon this ripe, unsuspecting world.
What they saw in that vision shocked them to their core. Medivh himself allowed the Horde entry into the world. The real Medivh showed up and Garona noticed two shadows behind him. Two shadows, one of Medivh and one of the real evil within him, Sargeras. They had to escape the tower and get some help, so Khadgar summoned a vision of the one who had battled this beast before, and the rooms changed around them, showing the moment where Aegwynn confronted her son and simply asked him, why? Medivh, the real Medivh, was mesmerized by this vision, and they used this momentum to escape the tower, find Anduin Lothar, and return to Kil'jaeden to stop the corrupted Guardian. To stop the one who had allowed the Orcs into Azeroth, who had murdered mages who were onto him, who had murdered the Council itself. As they made their way into Kil'jaeden, they found a hidden entrance leading down. They found out that there was an area beneath the tower which was the opposite to the tower above the grounds. Where above you would find a library, down below you would find a torture chamber. It was almost as if the tower reflected the two sides of Medivh himself. They found Medivh at the very bottom and they confronted him with what he had done. In that battle, Medivh attacked Khadgar and literally sucked the life out of him, making him look like the old man from the vision. He also touched Garona, transferring his emotions to her mind, his own divisions and doubts, which made her scream in torment and knocked her out for the rest of the fight. Lothar stepped up, attacking the mage with his blade, and Medivh set his clothes on fire, claiming that it just got easier. In that moment of distraction, Khadgar was able to get close enough and he stabbed Medivh through the heart. In his final moments, Medivh said, "Thank you. I fought it for as long as I could." Then the Master's Mage's face began to transform, the beard turning fully to flame, the horns sprouting from his brow. With the death of Medivh, Sargeras finally came fully to the surface. But before he could, Lothar raised his blade and chopped off his head. With that, Sargeras and Medivh were defeated. They buried his corpse outside of Kil'jaeden and made their way to Stormwind, where Garona would become an advisor of the king and eventually betray him, just like she had seen in the final vision from Kil'jaeden. Garona would disappear, Stormwind would fall, the people would evacuate to Lordaeron, and Lothar and Khadgar would warn the world of the Orcish invasion. After Lothar, Garona and Khadgar defeated Medivh, they moved to Stormwind and they tried to defend the city from the invading horde. Garona became an advisor for the king, but Gul'dan had placed a spell on her mind at a very early age, and this spell would turn her into a slave, forced to do whatever they told her to do. They used this spell to force Garona to assassinate the king because, as he himself said,
"We will hold until the reinforcements come. As long as men with stout hearts are manning the walls and the throne, Stormwind will hold."
Tremble, mortals, before the coming of the end.
The Orc leaders agree with your assessment.
With the king dead, Stormwind quickly fell. Anduin and Khadgar took the survivors and made their way to Lordaeron while Garona disappeared. A very long story follows, so I'll have to keep it short. Basically, the Horde was defeated and the Orcs that surrendered were placed in internment camps. Baby Thrall was also found by Blackmoor, who raised him as a slave and a gladiator, so Thrall could fight in his arena and earn him lots of gold. His ultimate plan was to use Thrall to lead the Orcs against the rest of the world, so that Blackmoor would become the ultimate ruler. But his plan backfired. Thrall escaped, met his own people, and he freed the Orcs from their internment camps. In the end, he killed the one who did him so much harm, Blackmoor, and he reformed the Horde, only this time it would be a more honorable Horde, willing to fight for their own place in this world. Around this time, Medivh enters the story again, and you might wonder, how is that possible? Well, Aegwynn was not killed by Medivh. He only teleported away and she used her magic to see what was going on, and she saw how Medivh was defeated and how the spirit of Sargeras had left his body. She then spent years on collecting her powers and she used this to resurrect her son. This process nearly killed her, stripped her of nearly all her powers, but she did manage to bring back Medivh uncorrupted and ready to save the world from the coming threats of the Burning Legion. Sargeras might have been defeated, but his plans were already in motion. The world was weakened by the struggles between the Horde and the Alliance, and the Burning Legion was about to begin their invasion of Azeroth. Before Medivh began his journey, he first paid a visit to Kil'jaeden, and that's the way the story of the Last Guardian is set up. It's that Medivh sees the visions of Kil'jaeden. He sees what happened in the past with Khadgar, with Lothar. That entire story is told by seeing it through these visions. At the end of the book, Khadgar of the past looks up and he sees Medivh of the future. Remember that past, present and future, they're pretty much fluid within Kil'jaeden, and they talk about the nature of the Guardian. The being on the balcony paused for a long moment, and Khadgar feared that he would fade away. Instead he said, "As long as there are guardians, there is order. And as long as there's order, the parts are there to be played. Decisions made millennia ago set both your path and mine. It is part of a greater cycle, one that has held us all in its sway." Khadgar craned his head upward. The sun was now touching the top half of the tower. "Perhaps there should be no guardians then, if this has been the price?" "Agreed," said the trespasser, and as the strong light of day began to grow, he began to fade. "But for the moment, for your moment, we must all play our parts. We all must pay the price, and then, when we have the chance, we will start anew." And with that, the trespasser was gone. That was Medivh's mission throughout Warcraft 3. The Guardian could have stepped up and taken care of the Burning Legion himself, but Medivh had a different plan, and for that plan he would need just a little bit more power. That power came from the Tower of Kil'jaeden itself. He used his magic to absorb all the visions from the tower. Medivh held both hands to his chest tightly, containing all that he had regained. The Tower of Kil'jaeden was just a tower now, a pile of stone in the remote reaches, far from the travel paths. Now the power of the place was within him, and the responsibility to do better with it, this time. And so we start anew, said Medivh. He transformed into a raven with the mission to unite the world against the Burning Legion, to teach the world that it no longer needed guardians, that Azeroth could rise up and defend itself. He paid a visit to Thrall sometime after he had reformed the Horde.
You must rally the Horde and lead your people to their destiny.
He paid a visit to the human kingdoms and King Tyrannus Manifield II.
I will not institute quarantine without proof of your claims, Ambassador. The people of Lordaeron have suffered enough without becoming prisoners in their own lands.
Yet prisoners they are, good king.
What is the meaning of this? Who are you?
Humanity is in peril. The tides of darkness have come again, and the whole world is poised upon the brink of war.
Enough of this. Guards, remove this madman.
Hear me. The only hope for your people is to travel west, to the forgotten lands of Kalimdor.
Are you mad?
Hold, Ambassador. I don't know who you are or what you believe, but this is not the time for rambling prophets. Our lands are beset by conflict, but it shall be we who decide how best to protect our people, not you. Now, be gone!
I failed humanity once before, and I will not do so again. If you cannot take up this cup, then I shall find another who will.
They would not listen, so he tried to convince the Magi of Dalaran.
You must be wiser than the king. The end is near.
I told you before, I'm not interested in this nonsense.
Then I've wasted my time here.
He even tried to warn Arthas.
Greetings, young prince. We must talk.
I have no time for this.
Listen to me. This land is lost. The shadow has already fallen, and nothing you do will deter it. If you truly wish to save your people, lead them across the sea, to the west.
Flee? My place is here, and my only course is to defend my people.
Then your choice is already made. Just remember, the harder you strive to slay your enemies, the faster you'll deliver your people right into their hands.
But there was only one human willing to listen to him.
The dead in this land might lie still for the time being, but don't be fooled. Your young prince will find only death in the cold north.
You! Arthas is only doing what he believes is right.
Commendable as that may be, his passions will be his undoing. It falls to you now, young sorceress. You must lead your people west to the ancient lands of Kalimdor. Only there can you combat the shadow and save this world from the flame.
Jaina Proudmoore took the people of Lordaeron, as many as she could. She took them away from the plague, and she allied herself with Thrall and Cairn Bloodhoof.
That voice. You're no oracle. You're the prophet.
Very perceptive, son of Durotan. I am the prophet. And now that I've lured you all here, I will tell you what destiny holds.
What the hell is going on here?
Thrall, this is Jaina Proudmoore, leader of the survivors of Lordaeron.
Survivors? What are you talking about?
The invasion of the Burning Legion has begun. Lordaeron has already fallen, and now the demons come to invade Kalimdor. Only together, united against the Shadow, will you be able to save this world from the flame.
Unite with them? Are you mad?
Have you heard nothing that I've said? The Legion comes to undo history and end all life. Thrall, your friend Hellscream has already fallen under the demon's influence. Soon he and your whole race will be lost forever.
No. I'll die before I let that happen.
Then you must rescue him immediately. He is the key to the destiny I promised you. However, you will need help.
Wait, this is insane. You can't possibly expect me to...
Destiny is at hand, young sorceress. The time to choose has come. For the fate of all who live, humanity must join forces with the Horde.
They then teamed up with the Night Elves, Malfurion and Tyrande.
We have no time for this, Furion. What are we doing out here?
Last night in a dream, a great raven spoke to me and summoned me to this place.
We were summoned here as well.
Who are you, Outlanders?
I am Thrall, son of Durotan, war chief of the Horde.
And I am Jaina Proudmoore, leader of the human survivors of Lordaeron.
You are not welcome here.
Peace, priestess. They've come to aid you against the Legion.
It was you in my dream. But who are you to make such an offer to us?
I am the reason for the Legion's return. Years ago, I brought the Orcs into this world, and by doing so, I opened a path for the demons as well. For my sins, I was murdered by those who I cared for most. Despite my death, war raged across the lands of the East for many long years, leaving entire kingdoms devastated in its wake. Now, at long last, I have returned to set things right. I am Medivh, the last Guardian. I tell you now, the only chance for this world is for you to unite in arms against the enemies of all who live.
Humans, orcs, Tauren and Night Elves, a strange alliance was formed, but it would prove to be strong enough to stand against the Legion, and even defeat one of their commanders, our command.
The roots will heal in time, as will the entire world. The sacrifices have been made. Just as the Orcs, humans, and Night Elves discarded their old hatreds and stood united against a common foe, so did nature herself rise up to banish the shadow forever. As for me, I came back to ensure that there would be a future, to teach the world that it no longer needed guardians. The hope for future generations has always resided in mortal hands. And now that my task is done, I will take my place amongst the legends of the past.
And so ends the story of the Guardians. The protection of this world is now in the hands of mortals. Or so you would think. There is currently a new Guardian on Azeroth, Medan. But before we talk about Medan, let me first tell you what happened to Aegwynn. After the alliance between Thrall, Jaina and the Night Elves, Thrall and Jaina decided to relocate to Kalimdor, where Jaina would build Theramore and Thrall would build Orgrimmar. Old hatreds die very hard and the orcs and humans were having a hard time living in peace, even after Jaina sacrificed her own father. Thrall and Jaina, they did their absolute best to keep the peace going, but it wasn't easy and it almost looked like some external force was trying to manipulate events, trying to cause another war. One day, the forest around Thunder Ridge was removed by magic, which caused the Thunder Lizards to run rampant across the land, destroying farms and causing all kinds of problems. Some orcs immediately blamed the humans, some were even suggesting that Jaina had something to do with this, but Thrall was wiser and he first wanted to find out what was going on. So he talked to Jaina and she promised him that she would take care of the situation. She planned on relocating the lizards to the Bladescar Highlands, where they wouldn't cause any more trouble. When she tried to teleport the lizards away, something prevented her from doing so, and it turned out to be magical wards, protecting the area from unwanted visitors. Jaina managed to locate the wards and inside she found Aegwynn. Aegwynn had always been a role model to Jaina, a female mage who cleared the way for other females, who was accepted by the council and she really looked up to the Magna. Aegwynn just laughed at what Jaina told her and she explained bits and pieces of her true story. How arrogant she was, a fool for being manipulated by Sargeras, causing the first Orcish invasion, all of that story, everything she'd done wrong. Aegwynn felt guilty and a heavy burden on her shoulders. As they were talking, they felt that the magical wards around Aegwynn Place were reactivated, only this time they felt different. They could feel the magic behind them, and Aegwynn recognized it to be Smotlor's magic. Smotlor, the same demon Aegwynn defeated so many years ago in a school in the village of Jorthas. All Aegwynn wanted to do at this point was to live out the rest of her days away from the rest of the world, just waste away in her own self-pity, but Jaina wouldn't let her. Despite all of Aegwynn's mistakes, she never stepped away from her duty. She might have been wrong, but her motivations were always for the good of the world. Now, all these events between orcs and humans, the Burning Blade cult, magical wards made by Smotlor, it all came together, and Jaina knew that he was behind this. She brought Aegwynn with her, and at the end of the story they find the demon who caused all this trouble. Jaina tried to use her own magic with a spell created by Aegwynn. This spell would allow them to banish Smotlor back to the Twisting Nether, but at this point Jaina was tired. She didn't have enough power to defeat him alone, so Aegwynn grabbed Jaina and poured all of that magical power that she had gathered into Jaina. Aegwynn continued to focus, willing her life, her magic, her very soul to Jaina Proudmoore. Jaina opened her eyes. Normally an icy blue, they were now a fiery red. Combining their power, they managed to defeat the demon, and peace between Theramore and Orgrimmar was restored. At least for the moment. Aegwynn nearly gave her life, but she survived that moment and she became Jaina's Chamberlain, giving her advice and telling her when she was wrong. In her role as Chamberlain, she assisted Jaina in helping Varian Rin. Varian was split into two by Onyxia's magic, and he was having trouble figuring out who he was and what had happened. Jaina and Aegwynn, they helped him with figuring out who exactly he was, and told him that he was the King of Stormwind. So at this point, Jaina and Aegwynn are working together. Varian was able to fix himself, defeat Onyxia and save Anduin. It's at this point in the story that we meet Medan, and there's so much going on, so many characters and different stories, that I'll have to do my best to keep it focused on Medan. Let's begin at the beginning. When Garona Half-Orcan was inside Karazhan, she met with Medivh and she grew to like him and trust him. In a moment where Sargeras' attention was elsewhere, Medivh managed to father a child with Garona, namely Medan. Medivh would eventually be defeated, and Garona betrayed the king because of that mind spell placed by Gul'dan. She knew from that moment on that she couldn't take care of this child, not without putting his life in danger, so when he was born, she gave the child to Merrill, the same undead mage Merrill that was part of the First Council. Merrill raised Medan while never telling him about his parents, and Medan is a unique character. Part orc, part Draenei, part human, and right at the start of the story, he's already able to wield the powers of a shaman, a mage, and he has the necessary skills to fight with a weapon. There's also a prophecy surrounding Medan which says the following. When the child of the three realms becomes as light, the ancient power will be released. The earth will tremble, the seas will rise up in answer, and all will be madness. A new day will dawn, bring with it chaos or peace. This prophecy found its way to Cho'Gall, former student of Gul'dan, who now works for the old god C'Thun. C'Thun by this time is already defeated by us, but he's not killed, and Cho'Gall plans to use Medan and this prophecy to resurrect the fallen old god and bring about the end of the world. So what happens to Medan? He's attacked by the Twilight's Hammer Clan in order of Cho'Gall. Garona jumps out of a tree and she saves him, but she does get captured herself. Even though she was afraid to raise Medan, she couldn't just leave him to his fate, and she always kept an eye on him. Garona is then taken to Ank'Hirai, where Cho'Gall awaits, and he uses that mind spell to force Garona to attack Theramore. Cho'Gall was Gul'dan's student, as close as an ally Gul'dan ever had, so he knew how to use that magic. They wanted Garona to attack Theramore, since at that moment a peace summit between the Horde and Alliance was taking place. Medan overhears Merrill talking, and he finds out that Garona is his mother, and he goes after her while Garona attacks Theramore. Remember that it was Garona who killed Varian's father. He saw her do this as a child, and when he saw her Theramore, he immediately accused the Horde of sending the same assassin after him. Garrosh took this very personal, and he blamed the Alliance for what was going on. Eventually, they managed to repel the attack. They nearly killed Garona, but Medan jumped in and saved her life. Medan's then captured himself by the Twilight's Hammer Clan, while Garona is put in chains at Theramore. This meant the end of any peace between the Alliance and the Horde. They didn't outright attack each other at that moment, but any negotiations were off the table. Each of them returned to their homes to eventually deal with the Lich King attacking Azeroth. Garona wanted to find her son, but there were spells placed on her minds blocking her from the truth. Jaina used her own magic to penetrate these blockades, which caused Garona agonizing pain, but in the end they found the truth. Cho'Gall was in Ank'Hirai, and that's where they would find Medan. Valeera, together with Merrill, teleported to Ank'Hirai in an attempt to save Medan. We'll do a story on Valeera in the future, but what you need to know is that she met Varian while he was dealing with Onyxia. Onyxia wanted Varian dead, so she sent an assassin after him, and his warlock assassin placed a curse on Valeera called the Mark of Khafre-Natir. For those who've been paying attention, Khafre-Natir is the same demon that the first Guardian had to deal with. This mark placed the demon inside of her, and during her rescue attempt, she was forced to fight with Cho'Gall. Cho'Gall outpowered her greatly, so she accepted the demon inside of her. She accepted him taking over her body if it would allow them to defeat Cho'Gall. Not even Khafre-Natir was powerful enough to defeat Cho'Gall, but it did buy them enough time to rescue Medan and teleport away. The demon tried to manipulate Medan, tried to take over his mind and body, but Merrill stepped in and made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. Exchanged the body of Valeera for Merrill himself. Now this ancient undead human also contained the spirit of Khafre-Natir, but Merrill was not just any mage, and he was able to contain the demon, at least for the moment. Meanwhile, back at Theramore, Garona is rescued by Vindicator Marad. Marad had found out that his sister's child was Garona, and it was actually a surprise for Garona herself. She always believed that she was half human and half orc, but Marad was positive that he was her uncle and that she had a major role to play against Cho'Gall. Marad also met Medan, and he taught him about the light, and he did this to keep the whispers of C'Thun out of Medan's head. He warned Medan that it would take years to truly master the light, but Medan instantly picked it up without any effort. Which meant that Medan was safe for the moment, and they all sat down to talk about what was going on. They figured out that Cho'Gall and C'Thun were a huge threat to the world, especially since the Horde and Alliance were dealing with the Scourge attacks. Merrill told them about the first Council of Tirisfal, how they came together, and funneled their powers into one. They decided that this was the way to go, that the Guardian had to return to battle against C'Thun and Cho'Gall. This time, they wouldn't just use Magi, This time the council would consist of members from all kinds of magical origins. Druids, magi, priests, shamans, all of them combining their powers. As they worked on creating the council, getting the members ready, Medan took a trip with Mannoroth to Outland, where he met Khadgar and they talked about his father. Medan also received a vision from his father which summoned him to the Tower of Karazhan, but at first Medan didn't want to go. Most believed that Medivh was truly evil, but Khadgar explained that Medivh was corrupted and he didn't really have a choice. This pushed Medan into going to Karazhan, where the avatar of Medivh was waiting for him. This wasn't the real Medivh, this was his avatar, a vessel with his powers and memories, and he told Medan his life story. At the end, he offers Medan his remaining powers to use freely in any way that Medan desires. Medivh had no intention of forcing his son into a destiny or future, just like he and his mother were. Medan had a choice, and he chose to take the fight to Cho'Gall, to use his powers for good and for the defense of Azeroth. There were two things required for the final battle. First, a new council which would empower Medan, and those part of the council were the following: Jaina Proudmoore, Human Mage; Dalinia Revskar, Blood Elf Mage; Hamul Runetotem, Tauren Druids; Brawl Baremantle, Night Elf Druids; Marad, Draenei Paladin; Rohan, Dwarf Priest; and finally Rhaegar Earth Fury, Orc Shaman. All these different sources of power, they combine themselves with Medan. Power we have, power we share, out of many into one. Even with this incredible power boost, Medan wasn't able to defeat Cho'Gall, and the demon Khadgar Nazir managed to shake off Meadow's control and he followed the stream of power back to the council. Now the council had to deal with this demon instead of linking their power with Medan, and this left Medan weakened. Aegwynn at that moment stepped up to the plate and she sacrificed the last of her energies to empower her grandson, to buy the council enough time to restrain Khadgar Nazir and relink themselves with Medan. After all her battles, nearly giving up her life several times, this time the end had come. She poured her love and her strength into her grandson, and Medan was able to hold off Cho'Gall, but he still was not able to defeat him. The second thing that Medan required was Aetius, Great Staff of the Guardian. This legendary staff was passed on from Guardian to Guardian, but it was shattered and only the bottom half somehow made its way into C'Thun. Garona had recovered the base inside the corpse of C'Thun, and after a long struggle she brought it to Medan. As the base touched Medan, he used his powers to restore it to its former glory and finally end the threat of Cho'Gall. Cho'Gall's mission had failed. C'Thun was not resurrected and the prophecy was fulfilled. When the child of the three realms, Draenor, Azeroth and Argus, becomes as light, the ancient power will be released. The earth will tremble, the seas will rise up and answer, and all will be madness. A new day will dawn, bring with it chaos or peace, and since the day was won, peace was found. Medan then returned his powers to the members of the council, and they buried Aegwynn next to Medivh at Karazhan. Garona had to leave her son again, because they might have stopped Cho'Gall today, but he wasn't killed, and as long as he was alive, she was a threat to anyone around her. She would pursue Cho'Gall all the way to the Twilight Highlands, where we could find her during the Cataclysm, but we would eventually be the ones who actually killed Cho'Gall. The council, they broke up and they returned to their original roles within the Warcraft story. They haven't really mentioned the council or Medan ever since. There was a mention in Velen's short story about Medan, but other than that we haven't seen it in game, we haven't seen it in the stories. Some of you asked me if I think that we'll ever see this character in game and why people hate the character of Medan. I can't speak for everyone, so you'd have to ask them what their problem is with his character. But for me there are two things that stand out with Medan. First of all, he's just too damn powerful. He's a mage, a priest, a shaman, a warrior hybrid, and anything that he can't do he'll just pick up within seconds. That's insane, and that's saying something for the Warcraft universe, since we already have insanely powerful characters like Varian Wrynn, who has a demigod watching over him and empowering him, or Thrall, who got equal to the aspects during the Cataclysm. Imagine them placing an even more powerful character within the game. There would be nothing left to do for anyone. Old got trouble? Just send Medan. Sargeras knocking on a door? Send Medan after him. I think even Blizzard recognizes this, because they have been asked several times whatever happened to Medan, and apparently he's off on a different world studying or protecting it. He's gone. Let's just put it like that. He's not on Azeroth, he's not in the story, and yeah, he's not around. The second thing that bothers me about Medan is that creating him pretty much destroyed what Medivh did during Warcraft 3. Remember that Medivh wanted to teach the world that it could take care of itself, break the cycle so that it no longer needed to have guardians. It had such a beautiful ending, with even a little bit of speculation about Medivh, whether or not he's still around. Now with Medan, they completely went back on that decision, and it makes what Medivh did back in Warcraft 3, it just makes it silly. He could have just stepped in, fight the Burning Legion himself, and hand over his powers to his son. His son that he was able to make while being corrupted by Sargeras. Which is also pretty damn impressive. There are more reasons to dislike his character, but that's mainly my feeling behind it. And to the question, will we ever see him in-game? I highly doubt it. Will Medivh ever make a return? Well, not unless they declare this comic as non-canon. Medivh handed over his powers to Medan, so he should be powerless. He should be gone. In the novel Twilight of the Aspects, he makes a cameo as Thrall travels through time. But that wasn't the return of Medivh, so as much as I would love to see it, I doubt he will ever come back. Not unless they do some serious retconning. What we can hope for is that they give him a part in the World of Warcraft movie, because that would be pretty damn cool. A corrupted Medivh out there with Lothar and Durotan. I would love to see that, but we'll just have to wait and see what they're going to do. Let's take a look at the story of Gul'dan. When Kil'jaeden found out that the Draenei were hiding on Draenor, he figured that sending his Burning Legion to kill them was not the best option. He had tried this many times before, and every time the Draenei managed to escape his wrath, and this time he figured that a more subtle plan was required. Instead of sending his legion, he decided to use the race of orcs already present on Draenor. He manipulated the shaman Ner'zhul by sending him a vision of his deceased mate Rokan, and convinced him that the Draenei were plotting against the orcs. To the orcs, the ancestors, they were revered, and their wisdom was highly respected, so they trusted their words and they started to train and fight the Draenei. Over time, Ner'zhul realized that something wasn't quite right. Kil'jaeden had shown himself in his true form, which looked very similar to the Draenei, and Ner'zhul no longer felt joy while serving his beautiful being. He now felt fear, and he distrusted Kil'jaeden, so one night he rode out to Oshu'gan to communicate with the ancestors. When he arrived at the mountain, he tried to communicate with the ancestors to ask them for guidance and wisdom, but to his dismay, the ancestors turned their back on him. He had led the orcs down a path they should have never taken, and Kil'jaeden had not the best intention for their people. He had deceived Ner'zhul and the orcs, played them like puppets, and Ner'zhul realized that it was all his fault. On his way home, he tried to think of plans to mitigate the damage and perhaps turn things around, but his apprentice Gul'dan had followed his master, and he had learned everything that Ner'zhul had found out. He knew that Ner'zhul was about to betray Kil'jaeden. He had informed the Glorious One on everything, and Kil'jaeden, he was disappointed, he was mad at Ner'zhul, but he didn't strike the orc down. He let him stay and see what would happen to his people, as Gul'dan took Ner'zhul's place into following Kil'jaeden's orders. There was no need for deception when it came to Gul'dan. All Gul'dan required was the promise of more power to lead his people into darkness. First order of business was to appoint someone to lead the orcs, while Gul'dan kept himself busy with more important matters. The orc perfect for this job was Blackhand, first war chief of the Horde, who ruled the orcs, while in truth, behind the curtains, Gul'dan was actually the one in charge. He had his own shadow council with carefully selected members that would decide the best course of action for the Horde, and the best course of action in Gul'dan's mind was to get him more power. Blackhand believed that Gul'dan entrusted all his secrets to him, that they were equals in power, but Blackhand was nothing more than Gul'dan's puppets. Next, they had to find a way to increase the powers of their shamans. The elements on Draenor, they'd realized that finding the Draenei was not the right thing to do, so they'd refused to aid the shamans with their powers. To compensate, Gul'dan and Blackhand, they presented the orcs with a new source of power given to them by the beautiful beings who had already done so much to help them. The first Orcish warlocks were created, wielding fell magic, controlling demons, dealing devastating damage to the Draenei. They even used their life-draining powers to magically age the children of the orcs, so that their fighting numbers would quickly increase. Now as all of this happened, as you might imagine, this did not happen overnight. Now not all the orcs, they agreed with all these changes. Some of them, like Durotan for example, they actually spoke out against it. But the majority of the orcs, they followed willingly. Durotan was sickened by the approval of these demonic powers, but even he allowed his shamans to learn these arts to keep his people safe. They no longer had the elements on their side, so they had to do something to defend themselves against the Draenei. And besides that, going against the will of the Horde would mean exile and almost certain death. Now, even with their new powers, even after uniting in a single horde as a single force, Gul'dan realized that they still required more power to take on the Draenei. He was thinking about a solution, and a brilliant yet crazy idea came to mind. He told Blackhand that he and his clan should ride out and recruit ogres into their ranks. Ogres and orcs, they've been enemies for as long as they could remember, so this idea just to come up with it was insane, but Gul'dan managed to convince Blackhand. If Blackhand would be able to pull this off, then he would just add more glory to his name, and it would convince those who said that Blackhand's election as war chief was not completely fair. The Black Rock clan, they rode out in force, and they negotiated with the dumb but powerful ogres. They found out that the ogres, they were actually enslaved by the Grunn, and in exchange for food, weapons, no longer getting beaten, and the promise of smashing Draenei, the ogres, they willingly agreed to join the ranks of the Horde.
Me smash you!
Not all orcs had given themselves completely to the new way of the Horde, and some of them saw themselves as shamans, and a few of them even tried to communicate with the ancestors. Gul'dan could not risk the ancestors informing anyone about their true intentions, so he traveled to the mountain of Oshu'gan, and he had his warlocks seal it with dark, powerful magic, preventing anyone from entering. This meant that the spirits of the ancestors were now trapped, that there was no way of communicating with them anymore, and that there was no way for the orcs to return to their former days. One by one, the cities of the Draenei fell. Even the holy place known as the Temple of Karabor was not able to stand against the might of the Horde. However, the one Kil'jaeden desperately wanted to kill, Prophet Velen, the leader of the Draenei, he had so far been able to stay out of their clutches. Only one major city remained to be taken, the city of Shefref, but Kil'jaeden, he had one last gift for the orcs before they would take the city. All the clans were summoned to the area we now call the Throne of Kil'jaeden. Gul'dan had sent them all a letter, and he had given Ner'zhul the task of spreading the word. Unknown to Gul'dan was that Ner'zhul had not lost all of his fighting spirit just yet, and he dared to write a small message to Durotan, warning him not to accept this gift that was about to be presented to them. On the mountaintop, Gul'dan, he showed them the Cup of Unity, filled with demonic blood poured earlier into a pool by the Pit Lord Mannoroth. This blood would indeed give the orcs incredible powers, and it would make their eyes burn fiery red, but in exchange they would become slaves to the Legion. Now Durotan, he was warned beforehand not to take this gift. His longtime friend Orgrim Doomhammer, he was wise enough to stay away from it on its own, but other orcs did not see the dangers. Gromar's Hellscream of the Warsong clan was the first to step up and embrace this gift. Now fire pumped in his veins, a mad lust for killing took hold of his body, and many of the orcs followed in his footsteps. Now they were ready. Now they had all the power needed to take the final city of the Draenei and eradicate them once and for all. From a distance, Kil'jaeden and Mannoroth, they observed the slaughter, and they figured that their mission was complete. Surely there was no way that Velen could have escaped this slaughter, so they abandoned the planet and they left the orcs to their fate. What they didn't know was that Velen and some of his people, they had evacuated the city and they had left some of their people behind to make it look like they were all killed. Velen grieved over sending so many people to their deaths, but the Naru assured him that he was needed for something greater. The Draenei and their leader, they would face some hard times in the marsh, but the orcs, they would do no better. The use of fel magic and the corruption from the Legion had not only corrupted the orcs and turned them green, had it also corrupted the land. It was now a very dry land. Food was limited, water was polluted, and the orcs, they started to fight each other because the demon blood was still pumping in their veins and they simply had to strike out. Over the years, more and more voices, they rose up pointing fingers to those who led them down this path. Gul'dan, he was feeling the rope tightening around his neck, and worst of all that promised power from Kil'jaeden had proved to be nothing but a big bag of air. The orcs, they might have perished on their planet, was it not for Sargeras who had need of them. Sargeras, he is the leader of the Burning Legion, the whole reason why Kil'jaeden turned evil and wanted his former friend dead, and Sargeras had managed to infiltrate the body of the guardian Medivh. The Guardians, they're actually Azeroth's major defense against the Legion, so Sargeras had managed to infiltrate a powerful position and he used it to weaken the world and get it ready for an invasion. He made contact with Gul'dan and he showed him a world ripe for the taking. Water, food, plenty of humans to give the orcs a good fight. Gul'dan and his people, they had Azeroth as a promise and they worked on Draenor to create a portal, while Medivh, under the influence of Sargeras, made the portal on Azeroth.
I am grateful for your aid, champions. Now, Gul'dan's horde will sweep across this world like a locust swarm, and all my designs, all my carefully laid plans, will at last fall into place.
With a sacrifice of a Draenei child found by the Orcs, the portal was activated on Draenor's side and it was connected to Azeroth. A connection that lasts to this day. Now the Orcs invasion did not instantly happen. They didn't conquer the whole of the world in a single day. Some very important things happened between the Orcs' arrival and the Fall of Stormwind. First of all, the orc Gerona half-Orcan, she made her way to the Tower of Karazhan to trade information and be a link between the humans and the orcs. Gerona was actually created by Gul'dan by forcing an orc and a Draenei to mate with each other. He then tortured her, he placed magical spells on her mind that made sure that she would remain obedient, he trained her in the ways of an assassin, and she became his spy, an informant with a mission to gather information and report back to Gul'dan. What Gerona didn't expect was that she felt a conflict of allegiance. She was half orc, half Draenei, and at the time she actually believed she was half orc, half human, so she didn't fit in with her own people, but neither would she ever fit in with the humans. She did feel some sort of trust for the old Medivh, they even had a child together, but that's a whole different story on its own. The point is, at one point Gerona stopped reporting to Gul'dan and instead placed her loyalty with the humans. Over time, Medivh apprenticed Khadgar. He would figure out that it was actually Medivh who had brought the orcs to Azeroth. He collected Gerona, he collected Anduin Lothar, and together they struck out at Medivh and they actually managed to take him out. When Khadgar stabbed his former mentor, the spirit of Sargeras slowly started to appear, but Anduin Lothar, he chopped off his head before he was able to materialize. This took care of the initial threat of the Guardian and Sargeras, but the orcs, they were already on Azeroth and their invasion was picking up. The King of Stormwind, Elaine, father of Varian Rin, he believed that Stormwind could hold.
The clans are united under Black Hand in this assault. They will stand together until Stormwind has fallen.
Before the coming of the end.
Gul'dan is bringing up his warlocks by nightfall. Until then, the Blackrock clan will be trying to take the eastern wall.
1,000 deaths. We will hold until the reinforcements come. As long as men with stout hearts are manning the walls and the throne, Stormwind will hold.
The Orc leaders agree with your assessment.
By helping them with Medivh, Gerona had earned her spot at Stormwind's court. They trusted her, but the magical spells placed on her minds, they were activated by the ogre Cho'Gall. Cho'Gall was one of Gul'dan's greatest allies and his apprentice, and Gerona was forced to take out the king. With the king fallen, Stormwind fell as well, and their citizens, they were forced to set sail towards the kingdom of Lordaeron to warn them about the coming threat of the Horde. Meanwhile, things didn't exactly stand still for the Horde either. Durotan, he had decided that enough was enough. He saw how Gul'dan had sacrificed a child to get him to Azeroth, and he realized that something had to be done. He spoke out against Gul'dan, which at the time did nothing, but it did get his clan exiled out of the Horde. This was a clear sign to Durotan that what he knew about Gul'dan was the absolute truth, and he could not sit by and let his fellow orcs remain under Gul'dan's control. He met with his longtime friend Orgrim Doomhammer, who actually welcomed Durotan, he welcomed Draka, and their newborn son Thrall at his campfire. Durotan told his friends everything he knew, the bargain that Gul'dan had made with the Demon Lord, the obscene nature of Gul'dan's powers, the betrayal of the clans through the Shadow Council, the eventual and dishonorable end of the orcs who would be thrown as bait to the demonic forces. Orgrim listened closely, and if it had been anyone else to tell him this story, then he would have told them that they were crazy, but this was Durotan. He trusted Durotan with his life, and he promised his old friends that they would stand against Gul'dan, the betrayer. Now obviously things were not safe for Durotan and Draka since they were exiled out of the Horde, so Orgrim, he sent one of his guards with them to escort them safely back. What they didn't realize was that this guard actually worked for Gul'dan, and from the bushes, Gul'dan's assassins took out Durotan, Draka, and even their escorts. They didn't kill their son though. They wanted Durotan to die with the knowledge that his son would be taken by the wild, but things would take a different path for young Thrall. Again, that's a different story for another time. The point is that his parents died, and Doomhammer knew that it was time to take action. He had always been loyal to his Warchief Blackhand, but the corruption of Gul'dan could no longer be tolerated. He challenged Blackhand for the title of Warchief, he took control over the Hordes, he murdered nearly all of the Shadow Council, and he waited for Gul'dan to wake up. He had to wait, since in the meantime Gul'dan was stuck in a coma. He had been snooping around in Medivh's mind for the knowledge and the power that was promised, and right around that time, Lofar chopped off Medivh's head, and this didn't kill Gul'dan, but it did send him in a coma. When he woke up, he found Cho'Gall near him, and Cho'Gall was still loyal to him, but most of his pawns they were removed from the board. Doomhammer was about to take Gul'dan's life, but Gul'dan was able to convince him to keep him alive, because even though Doomhammer hated Warlocks, and especially Gul'dan, he did need them to fight the humans, their mages. On top of that, Gul'dan also promised Doomhammer more powerful troops. The first of the Death Knights were created, fallen human soldiers of Stormwind, imbued with magical spells, and souls from Gul'dan's Warlocks were combined into one powerful being. Tedon Gorfiend was one of the first Death Knights created this way, and you might remember facing him in the Black Temple.
Death really isn't so bad.
Now naturally, all of this was just Gul'dan buying himself some time. He was in no way loyal to Doomhammer and in no way loyal to the Horde. In Medivh's mind, he had learned about the Tomb of Sargeras. This tomb was used by the guardian Aegwynn, Medivh's mother, to lock away the Avatar of Sargeras. In the past, Sargeras had used this avatar to come down to Azeroth. He tried to take the world, Aegwynn defeated him, and she thought that that was the end of the story. What she didn't know was that Sargeras actually planned on getting killed, which he used to infiltrate her body. Aegwynn got pregnant, she gave birth to Medivh, and that's how Medivh got corrupted by Sargeras. Now the avatar itself remained on Azeroth, and the avatar contains the powerful artifacts, and especially the Eye of Sargeras was waiting in this tomb, and all Gul'dan had to do was wait for the right moment to strike. This moment came when the Horde assaulted the kingdom of Quel'Thalas, and they battled with the High Elves. Quel'Thalas, they had magical stones around the city, which had great power in them, and Gul'dan convinced Doomhammer to allow him to experiment with these stones. He created an altar of storms, and he transformed ogres into ogre magi, loyal not to the Hordes, but to Gul'dan. Doomhammer was foolish enough to let Gul'dan experiment more with these altars, since the ogre magi had proven to be extremely valuable in battle. He still did not trust the Orc Warlock, but he had to admit that Gul'dan's plans were aiding the Horde in the war against the Alliance, and this mistake would mean the downfall for the Horde. Instead of meeting up with the Horde at the siege of the capital city of Lordaeron, Gul'dan and Cho'Gall they took their clans and they set sail to where the tomb was hidden beneath the waves. They used their magic to raise the tomb from the depths of the ocean, and some of Gul'dan's forces stayed outside of the tomb, while others followed him inside.
Quickly, you fools! Fan out and search for the primary passageway. We must reach the Chamber of the Eye before the tomb's guardians awaken. Spineless cowards! I said move! Now, Sargeras, I will claim whatever's left of your power and bring this wretched world to its knees. Blasted, feeble-minded weaklings. They're all likely dead by now. Still, I must press on. My power alone should be enough to... That laughter. Is that you, Sargeras? You seek to mock me? We'll see who laughs last, demon, when I claim your burning eye for my own. Ambushed by the Guardians. I am dying. If my servants had not abandoned me, I could have claimed the eye and... Damn you, Sargeras. I won't be beaten like this. I am Gul'dan. I am darkness incarnate. It cannot end like this.
This is as far as he got. The runes simply trail off. I cannot imagine what horrors Gul'dan faced in his final moments.
Doomhammer found out about Gul'dan's betrayal, and he split some of his forces to chase Gul'dan and bring him to justice. You have to understand that Orgrim was an orc of honor, and he could not allow such a dishonorable action to go unpunished. Splitting his forces did mean that they had to give up the siege of the capital city, and they were pushed back all the way to Blackrock Mountain, where they would lose the War of Azeroth, and the Dark Portal would be closed for the first time. Gul'dan's forces that he left outside were almost completely wiped out by the forces sent by Doomhammer, and Gul'dan himself, well, you saw what happened to him. His lust for power meant the end of his life as demons tore his body apart. Even in death though, Gul'dan played a massive role in several other stories in World of Warcraft, and just his skull had enough power to reopen the Dark Portal for a second invasion, to power up Illidan, which allowed him to take out Tichondrius, and who knows where Gul'dan's skull currently is. You can loot it as a trinket from Illidan, but I'm not certain if that's really part of the lore. Interesting fact though is that you can actually communicate with the skull of Gul'dan. It came into possession of Ner'zhul, it came into possession of Deathwing, Illidan had it in his hands, and in the books they described it as Gul'dan actually whispering to them. I wonder if he somehow manipulated Illidan, if he somehow influenced him, but I don't think they've ever confirmed this. All of Gul'dan's scheming and planning and just being an overall evil character is what makes Gul'dan my favorite warlord out of all of them. Let's talk about the Dark Titan Sargeras.
Sargeras!
This flamey space devil did not always look this way. Once upon a time, he was a member of the Titanic Pantheon, their defender, the noblest of all, taking on the darkness of the universe, while the rest of them, they traveled the great dark beyond, looking for more of their kind, and aiding them in waking up by bringing order to the planets. Funny enough, the reason for Sargeras turning to the dark side, that has changed a few times over the years. Once upon a time, it was said that the Eredar were responsible for his corruption, but they changed that when they wanted to add the Draenei back with the Burning Crusade. Then they gave it more of a philosophical reasoning. The constant darkness of the universe, it was eating away at him, slowly but surely making him believe that the universe wasn't meant for their orderly plans, and that chaos was the way to go. And finally with the Chronicles, they gave that idea a bit more substance. In the grand universe of Warcraft, there is the power of the Void, and these so-called Void Lords, they seek to devour all matter and energy within the physical universe. They saw the Titans do their thing, and became envious of their power. First, they tried to corrupt these fully grown Titans, but they quickly found out that that wasn't going to work. Instead, they set their sights on the ones that were more vulnerable, the ones that were still slumbering inside of planets. Like the Titans, the Void Lords had no idea which of these planets actually held one of these souls, so they decided to pool their powers together. They pushed through the boundaries into the physical universe, and they shot out what we know as the Old Gods, randomly flinging them across the great dark beyond, hoping that some of them would smash into a planet containing a world soul. Sargeras found out about these plans when he came across a planet which held one of these titanic souls and was indeed infused by the Old Gods. On it were also a couple of the Nafrizim, also known as Dreadlords, basking in that good old void power. Sensing their evil, Sargeras captured and ruthlessly interrogated the demons until they were broken, revealed what they had learned about the Old Gods and the intentions of the Void Lords. If the powers of the Void succeeded in corrupting a nascent Titan, it would awaken as an unspeakably dark creature. No power in creation, not even the Pantheon, could stand against it. In time, this warped Titan would consume all matter and energy within the universe, bringing every mode of existence under the Void Lord's will. In that moment, Sargeras, the undefeated champion of the Titans, knew fear for the first time. This bit is rather interesting, considering that we now know that the Nafrizim, they actually originate from the Shadowlands, have infiltrated the different cosmic domains. Their journal on this says that, in many ways, the Titans will be the easiest to manipulate. Their singular goal is to impose structure upon everything they see. Show them a force that opposes their drive for order, and they will be consumed by their urge to eradicate it. Their Pantheon, so seemingly united in purpose, is vulnerable to fracturing. And then for the Void Lords it says, I believe we can leverage their vast reach to position them as a foil against our other rivals. Now, the description of the Voids wanted to consume reality, that's still a thing, and ultimately they would have gone against the will of the Titans. But it is possible that the Nuff regime might have manipulated these events, might have pushed certain things in order. If that actually adds anything to the story, I'll leave up to you to decide. But there is the possibility of them pushing the Void into sending out their old gods to begin with, showing a force that opposes the Pantheon's drive for order. Now there's also the demons, of course. They weren't exactly on friendly terms with the Titans either. And this would indeed lead to a fracture of the unity of the Pantheon. Sargeras' mind was filled with fear. This plan of the Void Lords, it could not be allowed to play out. So with an aching heart, he drew his sword and destroyed the planet. Its remains are speculated to be the planet that the Void Elves party on, namely Telogris Rift. The noble champion then took the knowledge he gained and discussed his plans with the rest of the Pantheon. For him, even a lifeless universe, it was better than one dominated by the Voids. Life had taken root in the cosmos once before. Perhaps after they had scoured the physical universe of corruption, life would take root once again. His ideas horrified the others. How could he even consider purging the entire universe? Not even his student and brother-in-arms Agramar would side with his mentor. Nothing could ever be so dire as to warrant systemic extinction. Overcome with despair and feelings of betrayal, Sargeras then stormed off. If they weren't going to help him purge the universe in fire, he would do it himself, and he knew just the force to help him with this quest. Over the ages, with Agramar at his side, they'd been fighting against the demons of the Twisting Nether. But the pesky things, they kept on respawning. Their beings returned to the Nether, where it would take some time, but eventually they would regenerate. So to fix that problem, they'd come up with the prison world of Mardum, where all of these demons and their fel, they'd been trapped for quite some time. Shattering this plane of banishment, it caused a massive fel explosion, surging through his veins and searing his very soul. His eyes burst in gouts of emerald fire. Fell volcanoes ignited across his once noble form, splitting his skin apart and revealing an endless furnace of blistering hate. Yet despite these horrific physical changes, Sargeras' mind remained locked on his one all-consuming purpose. The released demons were then imbued with some of his powers and were offered a simple choice. They could either join his side, or since he had learned more about demons over time, they could truly be fully destroyed. And you'd say that that's not a difficult choice to make. And while most of the demons immediately signed up, there were those that resisted. Rallying around the Dreadlord Ultalesh, they challenged him, and in response, Sargeras forged a great felsteel scythe from the fires of Mardum's destruction, and he used it to harvest the souls of the uncooperative demons, confining them in a brand new prison. Ultalesh, strongest of will, was the last to be devoured, and with no more complaints or resistance, the Burning Legion was formed, kicking off their burning crusade.
No power in the universe will stand against the Legion.
Of course, the Pantheon eventually found out about what their fallen brother had done, and they tried to convince him that there was another way. They just spent their time bringing order to this little planet called Azeroth, and while it was infected with the old gods and also contained a slumbering titan spirit, they've been able to lock the corruption away, to give the planet and the titan inside a fighting chance to one day wake up uncorrupted. But all Sargeras heard was another target to take out, and so they battled. Pantheon versus demons. And while the Titans are epically mighty, they're also susceptible to fel magic. Agramar was nearly cleaved in two, while the rest of them were obliterated. The Pantheon was no more, and now Sargeras knew about Azeroth. He knew its name, but not its location, and it would take quite a while before first contact was made. In the meantime, Sargeras had learned from his battle with the Pantheon. He had learned that his demonic Burning Legion, it wasn't all that smart. Powerful for sure, but it needed a bit of strategic guidance. So he found himself some really smart people, which were called the Eredar, and he offered them a grand spot amongst his ranks. Two of the leaders, Archimon and Kil'jaeden, they were down with joining the Dark Titan. Not entirely surprising, as Sargeras, he'd been using the skull of Talkiel to whisper and corrupt Archimonde. But the further the leaders, Velen the prophets, he was shown by the Naru, beings of holy light and not down with the demons, that this was a really bad idea. He took those that he could, and he ran away. An act that Kil'jaeden would not forget nor forgive. From planet to planet, the Legion tracked the running Draenei down, until they were forced to make a crash landing on a little planet called Draenor, homeworld of the Orcs. They'll have their part to play in just a little bit. Now, there's quite a bit unknown about what Sargeras and his demons exactly have done within the Great Dark Beyond. Obviously, they caused a whole bunch of death and destruction, bathing the cosmos in flames, but it's also one of the biggest unexplored parts within the Warcraft lore, and there's a lot of opportunity to add story to. Just imagine what kind of undiscovered planets and races and stories are still out there to explore. Now we do know that recruiting the Eridar, it did not only bring Sargeras some powerful and smart lieutenants. The homeworld of Argus, it also contained a slumbering titan soul. This world was not infected with the old gods, so instead of deciding to destroy the entire thing, Sargeras bound it to his will, enslaved it, tortured it, used its power and strength, amongst other things, to resurrect his demonic forces. There is some dialogue that suggests and hints at the idea that Argus is the whole reason why demons can't be slain, but that does go against having to build Mardum in the first place, so I always took that information as speeding up the process. Either way, we can assume that the Legion brought quite a bit of death, destruction and conversion to the Great Dark Beyond, while they were searching for more infected worlds, until the moment came that Azeroth revealed itself. You see, the Highborn living on the planets, they were messing around with the powers provided by their Well of Eternity. This in turn drew the attention of Sargeras himself, with promises of power and all their heart's desires. He enticed Queen Azshara, her advisor Xavius, to work really hard on bringing Sargeras in. One of the most frequently asked questions is, why did Sargeras have to go through all of this? Why couldn't he just show up or travel to Azeroth himself? Simple answer would be that it makes for a really short story. But lore-wise, it has to do with, first of all, not knowing where Azeroth was, and then a potential travel time, and instantly bringing in someone of Sargeras' power. It requires a massive gateway, one that was going to take some time to be created with the powers of their well. So, while the Highborn performed rituals and did their thing, some of the lower-ranked demons, they were sent on ahead. In response, a resistance was formed, as not all of the elves were down with being purged in the Fel. Throughout this so-called War of the Ancients, we saw the demise of Xavius, but being near the portal, it meant that his spirit ended up in the hands of Sargeras. He took the bits of the advisor that pleased him, and sent him back as the first of the Seder. Then we also saw Illidan Stormrage playing the part of double agent, offering his power and services. To that, Sargeras seemed to chuckle. Such loyalty, it deserves a mark of favor. A mark that will at the same time aid in the fulfillment of your quest. Flames burned away Illidan's regular eyes, replaced them with magical ones. Through the ritual, he also saw the futility of merely defeating the demons on their world. The Legion was endless, and it would take striking at the heart to truly take care of them. That mission was going to take a few millennia to complete. First off, they had this war to win, reversing that massive gateway that was created. It was gonna take some time, which the legendary orc Broxigar bought them, at the price of his own life. He jumped through the gateway, all the way to Argus, where legions of demons tried to get past him. But Brox was a proud, time-traveling orc, a seasoned warrior, wielding the powerful axe of Cenarius. None of them got past him, until the mad titan himself approached. The force radiating from Sargeras, it made the might of the demons seem as nothing. The orc's shoulders cracked, several of his ribs collapsed into his organs. Sharp, agonizing pains ripped through him, and when he tried to rise, he was battered relentlessly. His legs were crushed, and his jaw broken on the right. Yet the orc's axe-swinging arm still gripped his weapon tight, and with a roar, he struck at Sargeras. A resounding bellow of outrage deafened the injured warrior. Through what remained of his good eye, Brox caught sight of a titanic, horned figure in molten black armor, whose thick mane and beards appeared to be composed of wildly dancing flames. The orc could not make out the giant's features well enough, yet somehow knew them to be both wondrously perfect and terribly awful at the same time. Sargeras made quick work of him, but this mortal was able to land a strike on the leader of the Legion. Insane. And his heroic actions, it would give them the opportunity they needed to close off the gateway, preventing Sargeras from coming in. But it didn't exactly stop his ambitions of reaching Azeroth. Perhaps a better plan would be to get there just a little bit quicker. Not to bring in his full might, but just a sliver of it in the form of an avatar. Surely, even just a pinch of his titanic power would be enough to weaken Azeroth and get him in there. A tactic which he has potentially used before. You see, Sargeras, he is always eager to find mighty new races that he could bend to his will and use as agents of destruction. Scattered legends speak of the ancient Aldraki race that drew his interest. If you've ever seen the movie 300, then you know what they're all about. There are people that are bred from birth from combat. Their entire culture revolved around it. No rather than destroy the Aldraki world outright, Sargeras ordered his forces to invade it. The Legion would wear the warriors thin until they were ripe for demonic conversion. The Dark Titan knew that his followers would suffer great losses against his enemy, but they did not discourage him. Whether it took a year, or 10, or 100, Sargeras would make the Aldraki hiss. Slowly and methodically, the Legion whittled away the Aldraki resistance, pushed them back to the towering stronghold in the heart of their war-torn capital. Their lands were covered in Aldraki and demon corpses. Only a handful of champions remained now, Toronar being the greatest among them. He rallied his allies in preparation for another Legion attack. But that never came. To the Aldraki's confusion, the demons halted their advance. A monstrous figure then emerged from the Legion's ranks. It was Sargeras himself, and he'd come with an offer for Toronar. Now no one knows for sure what form Sargeras took to confront Toronar. Some Nefrazim records say that he used an avatar rather than his actual form. Whatever the truth might be, it is certain that he called for Toronar to join the Legion, promising power beyond anything that they'd ever dreamed of. They would serve as his personal guards, and they would command tens of thousands of demons in war. He believed that such an offer would be irresistible to the Aldraki, but Sargeras had been wrong. Toronar vowed to destroy the Legion for all the Aldraki the demons had killed, or die trying. Either way, he would never bow to Sargeras. Demons still whisper of the battle that followed. The gathered Legion host watched with rapt attention as their ruler dueled with the Aldraki warrior. At any moment, Sargeras could have simply annihilated Toronar, but destruction was not what he wanted. He desired to corrupt the Aldraki champion, and he would need to exhaust Toronar to succeed. For days, the Legion's ruler did so. Like a cruel predator toying with prey, Sargeras battered Toronar with just enough force to wear him down. Now Toronar, being the seasoned warrior, he recognized Sargeras' ploy. He knew he could not best the Legion's commander in combat, and so he feigned submission. When Sargeras let his guard down, the Aldraki champion struck. One final act of defiance. His warblades ripped through Sargeras' hide, and fire burst from the wounds. We know that Broxigar struck the real deal, but for the Aldraki, it's a question of did they face an avatar or their full might of Sargeras. Either way, though it was only a minor injury, the other Aldraki howled in triumph, and it was the last time that such war cries would ever echo through the once great capital. The warrior and his fellow champions were ripped to pieces, while their Aldraki world was bathed in an inferno that would smolder for eternity. Their warblades were distributed amongst the Legion ranks, but still, what a legacy to be able to wound someone like Sargeras, even if it was potentially only his avatar. And that's what Sargeras planned to do with Azeroth as well. His most talented editor sorcerers, they worked on creating the Scepter of Sargeras. This cosmic battering ram, it held the power to create portals to any realm he desired. Yet the rifts it created, it would only allow a portion of his soul to enter. No matter, that would fit his plans perfectly fine. In the icy waste of Northrend, it was where he battled with the Guardian of Azeroth at the time. Aegwynn threw all that she had at him and did the near impossible. She defeated the avatar of her great enemy. But what she didn't know was that Sargeras had a backup plan. If he couldn't defeat Aegwynn, At the very least, he could weaken her defenses, create an opening for a shard of his spirit to break through. Just as he'd infiltrated Azeroth with the scepter, so too would he invade Aegwynn's soul, corrupting it into another instrument of the Legion. After locking the Avatar and artifacts that he bore away within the now called Tomb of Sargeras, Aegwynn, she went about her business with an unknown dark passenger when she decided to have a child, pass on the powers of the Guardian to Medivh. Sargeras hopped over from one vessel to the other. The brand new Guardian would be his to corrupt and manipulate, and using Guardians for his own means is apparently a favorite tactic to use, as in ages past he had used the Guardian's Skevel to take care of the Eredar's Hyjal. She had been gifted Ultalesh to reap the souls of Azeroth's rebellious denizens. She is the one that has transformed Deadwind Pass into the lifeless land that we see it as today, but that magical nexus of power, it had her ambitions skyrocket. Instead of passing it on to her master, she thought that one day she could challenge Sargeras himself. And so, Sargeras used Skevel to take care of her, and would later have Aegwynn build the Tower of Karazhan upon this location. The tower now being home for the Guardian Medivh. And through him, Sargeras worked on weakening Azeroth's defenses. He set up the Dark Portal, allowing the Orcish Horde of Draenor to invade the world. And you can actually witness this moment within the Caverns of Time. If memory serves, this was actually one of the first times that we could hear Sargeras speak.
No! Damn this feeble mortal coil!
Death and destruction followed, but his schemes did not go unnoticed. The apprentice Khadgar, together with Anduin Lothar and Garona Half-Orcan, they found out about the corruption that held their guardian. With pain in their hearts, they struck him down, but that didn't stop the plans already put in motion. The Horde washed over the world. The Legion has tried to invade time and time again. They tried to fulfill their master's ultimate goal, but each time the world's defenses held the line and pushed the darkness back, pushing them back, but not ending the threats. Illidan had seen what truly needed to be done in order to stop the Legion once and for all. We were going to have to strike at their hearts, at their home base on Argus. So in secret, he worked on his plans that finally came together during the Expansion Legion. By using the Sargerite Keystone, a device created by Sargeras himself, which is said to be a skeleton key to any Legion world, Illidan managed to open up a massive rift between Argus and Azeroth.
What have you done?
You might wonder why Sargeras has never used the keystone himself like that, and it's a really good question that you might want to ask Blizzard, because I have no idea. Either way, the rift allowed us to take our forces, fly on over to Argus, and team up with the Army of the Light. It is an army led by the Naru Zera that's been battling the Legion for millennia. Together, we stormed through Argus. We struck down any that dared to stand in our way. We entered on Taurus the Burning Throne, their seat of power, where Sargeras had his forces work on twisting the minds of the fallen titans, the same pantheon that he had struck down so long ago. All of them had been gathered here, somehow, except for Eonar, who hid away within her own little sanctum. The Coven of Shivara's whispers, they're said to be irrefusable by neither mortal nor demon. It's only a matter of time before the will of the Titans is broken, and Sargeras has the unstoppable Dark Pantheon. We managed to put a stop to those plans, even defeated the Avatar of Agramar, released the Spirit of Argus. All the while, those that had paid attention to the sky, they could see a cloud of raging power slowly but surely approach our worlds. Illidan's actions might have given us easy access to the core of our enemy, but the reverse was also true. Finally, Sargeras had his gateway to claim what he has wanted for so very long. We were definitely running out of time, but with the Pantheon released, we gained some powerful allies. Now, so long as Sargeras had his hands on Argus to fuel his demonic army, he would remain a massive threat. The Titans are able to sever his connection, but only at their place of power, the seat of the Pantheon. Unfortunately, Sargeras wasn't just going to let us do whatever we wanted. He turned the tormented Titan of Argus against us. The might of the Unmaker against heroes of Azeroth fueled by the might of the Pantheon. Together, we were able to do the impossible. Subdue the Unmaker, and by combining their powers with the last remnant of Argus, the Pantheon imprisoned their brother.
Every choice, every sacrifice has led me to this moment. To face him once again.
You are not coming with us.
The hunter is nothing without the hunt. Did you not see this fate, prophet?
Fate. Our survival was never in fate's hands. Light be with you, Illidan Stormwraith. Brother, your crusade is over!
Illidan decides to stay behind, as this is where his road in life, his destiny has led him. The seat of the Pantheon shall become Sargeras' prison, and theirs as well, while we safely returned home. In the sky, there's now a red star, a little reminder of the rift that was opened up. At long last, Sargeras' burning crusade is finally over. The Legion is no more, but as has happened so many times before, his actions rippled on. That sword stuck in the planets. It did not destroy the Titan spirit inside, but it did massively wound it. The expansion Battle for Azeroth played out, which dealt with that huge problem. We drained the blade of its corruption, we healed the wound, we even got rid of the old god's infection. All the while, Sargeras and the rest of them, they're still at the seat. Who knows what they're doing, or what the story might bring. Now, I would have loved to have seen the Spirit of Azeroth actually wake up during Battle for Azeroth. Just yoink that sword out of her back, become a powerful ally for our adventures into the great dark beyond. But that wasn't the route they took. Now, if the sources are correct, and Azeroth is truly the last Titan out there, and we have truly cleansed her of the old god's infection, then that means that Sargeras' original reasoning of forming his Burning Legion, that's no longer a thing. Sure enough, there is still the Void out there with the Void Lords. There might still be Void-infected planets that we don't know about. But the Dark Titan's fear, it was fueled by the idea of a corrupted Titan, and that seemingly is no longer a thing. That means that there's the potential of him becoming a future ally. A team-up with Azeroth itself, rumored to be even more powerful than Sargeras was. There's also been hints dropped about a potential Titan homeworld. There's a lot of cool things they could do there. I've also heard the speculation about turning Sargeras' sword into a Mournblade, but that just sounds way too cool to actually come true. Just imagine Illidan sitting on the shoulder of Sargeras as they fly on over, invite us to come along, help them kick some Void butt in the great dark beyond. I'd be well down for that, but only time is going to tell. There's also the question about the demons out there. The Burning Legion has been defeated. Sargeras is imprisoned. Arrogance and Kil'jaeden are taken out. A whole bunch of their top rankers are gone now, but demons in general, they're still out there. Without leadership, what are they up to? Did they just go back to what demons did before their imprisonment, which is causing a bunch of pain and misery? Or did new faces rise up to lead the demonic ranks for a whole new set of goals and reasons? Who knows?